o professor nunca me dá a oportunidade de conhecer as suas salas, porque muda muito de sítio.
Falta apenas o Dimitris, correto, Ricardo?
Correto. Ele deve estar conectando já.
Ok.
Professores, todos conseguem me ouvir e ver minha apresentação?
Ok. Então, só professor Manuel, professora Bruna, Renata, professor Gobo, sejam todos muito bem-vindos, tá? Eu apenas vou explicar que eu não estou no Brasil, estou afastado, né? O professor Dimitris, como orientador do Ricardo, vai conduzir todo o processo. Então, na realidade, aqui em Brisbane são 10 horas, 3 para as 10, na realidade, da noite. Então, eu vou ficar com vocês o máximo que eu conseguir suportar o sono aqui, mas todo o processo era conduzido pelo Dimitris, tá? Então, todo o trâmite, a gente conversou, fez algumas reuniões, e qualquer coisa que ele se apertar aí, Igor, você conhece o trâmite mais interno, dá um feedback para os dois, por favor. Renata, me perdoe fazer uma pergunta pessoal. Você conhece o Gregory Mielke?
Claro. Meu colega.
Não, que está aqui na UQ, e ele, na realidade, ele é o supervisor da Jamila, então a gente trabalha diretamente com ele. Falei, caramba, os dois são de Pelotas, trabalharam com a corte, deixa eu perguntar. É um mundinho pequeno, gente.
O Gregory era calouro lá na época da faculdade, lá da graduação, e depois fez o mestrado e doutorado na epidemiologia, aqui onde eu fiz também.
Que legal. Não, eu olhei a formação próxima, falei, caramba, né? A chance deles não se conhecerem é bem pequena, deixa eu confirmar.
Não, a gente era da mesma época, na
Que
graduação
legal,
e na pós.
Não, o Mielke é uma figura.
Ele foi aí, fez o doutorado de sanduíche, e aí já ficou com um tempo com uma bolsa, e depois aí veio, fez um pós-doc de um ano e voltou.
Não, mas vamos saber. Vou falar com ele depois.
Olá.
Hello, Professor Dimitris. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Can you hear me? Can you hear us well?
Yes, I can hear you all well. Yeah.
Okay. Dimitris, I already talked with them that you guide all the process. So I think you'll be totally fine. But if you have any question, talk with Gobo, because Gobo knows all the process perfectly. So before Dimitri started, I'd like to say thank you for all you to be here in this special day, not just for Ricardo, but for Dimitris and I. So thank you very much, Bruna, Professor Manuel João, Renata, and Luis Gobo. And I will watching you guys. I know I'm not participating in this process, but I am here helping, actually supporting Ricardo in my mind and just wishing all the best. So Professor Dimitris, the audience and all the professors are all yours. Thank you very much. Man.
Great. Thank you all for being here today with us. It's a great day for Ricardo, first of all, to defend his PhD. To start with, I will just explain the process of the defense, as you will all know, but it's nice to have a timeline of the day. So the defense will be as follows. So first, we'll have the presentation by Ricardo, focusing on the impact of swimming at competitive level on bone mineral density of adolescents. This will last approximately 50 minutes. Then we'll have the examination of each one of the 4 examiners of the process. And we'll start with Emmanuel first. Then we'll follow with Renata. And then we'll have Bruna. And then will be Gobo fourth. Following that, it's important to mention that after the first 2 examiners, after Manuel and Renata, we can have a 15-minute break after the second examiner, just to have a break of the process. And then we'll follow for the 3rd and the 4th examiner. On top of that, once we complete the examination process, we'll have a separate room only with the 4 examiners and myself to discuss about the progress, the quality of the PhD, and also to decide and vote regarding the examination process. And finally, we'll return to the main room so we can have the announcement of the votes and close the session of the process and proceed to the next. So this is the process. So we can start if we don't have any other questions. So Ricardo, the floor is yours. So please start your presentation. And if we can all mute the microphones, so we can leave Ricardo the floor so we can focus on that aspect. So good luck, Ricardo, and we're all looking forward to hear about your presentation and your PhD work.
Thank you, Professor Dimitris. Everyone can hear me and see my screen?
Yes?
Yes, perfect. So let's start. Hello, everyone. My name is Ricardo. I am a PhD candidate in movement science, supervised by Professor Romulo Fernandes and Dr. Dimitris Barrobulos. And today I'm going to present my PhD research project that is called Impact of Swimming at Competitive Level on Bone Mineral Density of Adolescents. Firstly, I want to let you know that my presentation will be composed by an introduction, objectives split in general and specifics, methods, a result sections that is divided in 5 different manuscripts, and lastly, a conclusion of my thesis. Firstly, we know that the adolescence is a period between 10 and 19 years old, is a critical period for human development, which means physical, psychological, and social transformation occurs, including in bone tissue. This period is especially important for bone tissue, considering that during the adolescence, we have the peak of bone mass gain that precedes the peak of high velocity. This happened around 12.5 years old in girls and 14.5 years in boys. We know that there are some determinants of peak of bone mass that we have in our adulthood. The most important determinant is the genetic factors. The genetic factors are responsible from 60 to 8% of all of our bone we have. However, we have another factors like nutritional factors, hormonal factors, and mechanical factors that can explain from 20 to 40% of our bone. How is important these lifestyle factors, like I said before? Physical activity, mechanical impact, and nutritional factors. If you're considering all of your bone occur until 20 years old, and mainly we have the peak of bone mass gain, like I said before, during my adolescence, 12 to 15, 16 years old. In this case, if we have a suboptimal lifestyle factor, in other words, we don't have a good enough physical activity, don't have a good nutrition, we can gain a lower bone mineral density accrue. If you gain less bone mineral density, we increase the risk of osteoporosis during my life, mainly in the elder life. In another way, if you have optimal lifestyle choices, if you get a higher peak of bone mass gain during the childhood and adolescence, we decrease the risk of osteoporosis during the life, regardless if you are in the elder life or not. Just to show how important is the adolescence for the bone mineral density, in this study, they used a computer simulation of a bone remodeling process to show if you increase 10% of our bone mineral density during the adolescence, just 10%, that a physical activity can do that. If we increase 10%, we can delay the osteoporosis in 13 years, or maybe it cannot happen in the person. But how the exercise can affect the bone tissue? How works the effect of exercise? The exercise can affect the bone in two different pathways. The first pathway is the direct effect of the exercise on the bone by the ground direction force that explained by the mechanostatic theory. This theory explained that the biomechanical stimulation is transformed in biochemical stimulation by my mechanical receptor. When I have this transformation biochemical stimulation, I will have the recruit of the bone cells, osteoblasts and the osteoclasts, responsible for bone remodeling and the bone remodeling. When I have the activity of the cells, I will have adaptation on the bone structure. The exercise also can affect the bone by the muscle. When I do an exercise, I have muscle contraction. And this muscle contraction generates strain on my bone. And this strain is also responsible for this bone modeling and remodeling. And then lastly, the exercise can also affect the bone tissue by the effect on hormones that are necessary for mineral homeostasis. So just in summary, how the exercise can affect in the pathways I said before. When I do acute exercise bound, this mechanical signal is transformed into metabolic signals. These metabolic signals are responsible for the mechanical receptor to activation of the basic multicellular unit. These basic multicellular units are responsible to increase the activity of osteoclasts. The osteoclasts will remove the old bone, creating the bone resorptions, and increase also the blood markers of bone resorption. However, when I continue doing my exercise, I have the chronic exercise effect, and I increase the activity of osteoblasts, and these osteoblasts will remove the bone formation, creating this way the bone adaptation. The bone adaptation is the process of bone resorption and bone formation, keep my bone strength. But we know that there are different physical exercise manifestations. However, we know that in children and adolescents, the sports participation is the most frequent physical exercise in children and adolescents. And specific about the sports more preferred by the children and the adolescents, we have the swimmers. If you see in all of continents in the world wide, the swimming is the sport in the top 5. We have a high number of adolescents practice swimming. For this reason, it's important to understand the effect of the swimming on bone mineral density and another health outcomes. However, we know that there are many sports, and each sport can affect the bone tissue differently. Why this happens? Because each sport is performed in a different environment, can be performed, for example, in hypergravity or ground, can have different mechanical loading, high impact, low impact, and odd impact, can have diversity of movements, sprint, jumps, running, and change of directions, and can involve different muscle construction activity, more concentrically, eccentrically, and isometrically. We know we have enough information in the literature to show that the swimming has a lack of an osteogenic effect. And it has been firstly hypothesized that the cause would be the water environment where the sport is performed, which lacks of mechanical force to simulate bone adaptations. However, it is not of our knowledge a study that compares the bone mineral density of swimmings to a wide number of sports modalities, mainly considering different patterns of mechanical stimulus, high impact, odd impact, and no impact. Just to show the state of the art about the subject, the most recent systematic review on the effect of swimming on bone mineral density published in 2016 presented just one longitudinal study design. And the study that was published after 2016 was performed with 12 months of follow-up and comparing just swimming or no sport group. And about the hypothesis that could justify this effect on swimming. Besides the absence of the impact, are there another hypothesis for this? We know that the intensity training, in other words, a training with higher daily training time, swimmers may do less physical activity in different domains, mainly in leisure time, as they aim to use this time to rest. In other words, considering the high training volume of the swimmers, they can use the free time just to relax, just to rest. This can affect the bony tissue. Why? When adolescents prefer to stay sedentary activity rather than a physical activity during the free time, we know that the sedentary behavior is related with lower bone mineral density because I don't have impact of my bone, I don't have stimulation on my bone. However, just one cross-sectional study analyzed this hypothesis in adolescent swimmers, but these swimmers had a lower training volume. In my case, my sample, I had swimmers at competitive level, swimmers that training more than 9 hours per week. Another hypothesis is about the possible physiological effect of the training routine of the athlete. We know in literature that the prolonged practice of swimming is negatively related to bone mineral density gains in adolescents. And in a recent study of our group, we found that the training load of the swimmers had a negative association with bone mineral density in lower limbs and the whole body. This negative association happened regardless the positive association effect of the limb soft tissue in swimmers. We know that normally when I have a high training load in a sport, I also have an intensity long exercise. And the literature also shows that intensity long exercise can lead in general to higher levels of inflammatory mediators, such as CRP, IL-6, IL-1, TNF-alpha, and thus might increase the risk of injury and chronic inflammation. We also have information in the literature that intense exercise performed in swimmers, when I do acute bout of exercise, intense exercise, this can generate also alterations in the GH-IGF-1 axis that is important for the physical growth of the adolescents. And they pro-inflammatory cytokines. And considering these inflammatory factors, when I look specifically for IL-6, when the IL-6 is from the inflammation, when they connect with the specific receptors IS, IL-6R, they can increase the osteoclast activity. Like I said before, osteoclast is responsible for bone remodeling, resorption. I remove the old bone by the osteoclastos. If the IL-6 for inflammation can increase the osteoclast activity and decrease the osteoblast activity, what can happen? I can decrease my amount of bone mass I have more bone. considering these adolescents are in the peak of body mass accrual, they can have not to lead a good amount of bone mineral density. However, this hypothesis has not been tested in the literature in adolescent swimmers. Lastly, we know that the research around the world are putting efforts to analyze the possibilities of mitigating the no-osteogenic effect of swimming. Just to show how the research are trying to looking at for this problem. This study, Agostinete study, analyzed the effect of a high-impact jumping intervention on bone mass, bone stiffness, and the fitness parameters of adolescent athletes. And this is another study analyzing the effect of whole body vibration training on bone mineral density and turnover markers of adolescent swimmers. We know that competitive athletes, normally they do a dry land training aiming to improve the athlete performance. And one of these dry land training is the resistance training. We know that the resistance training is used for the coaches because the resistance improve the strength and the muscle resistance of the athlete, and also to decrease the risk of injury in adolescent athletes. We know that the resistance training alone have a beneficial to the bone health of adolescents, okay? However, we don't have information in the literature the effect of swimming plus resistance training on bone mineral density accrual of adolescents. So, in this sense, the general objective of this thesis was to analyze the influence of swimming on bone mineral density cross-sectionally and longitudinally, besides to assess for the first time the possible no-osteogenic pathways of swimming on bone mineral density of adolescents. Secondly, the objective was to analyze the influence of resistance training participation in bone mineral density accrual of the adolescent swimmers. The general objective was split in 5 different specific objectives that is present in the thesis, in the chapters that is inserted by a manuscript. Chapter 4, manuscript 1, aimed to compare the bone mineral density and soft tissue profiles of swimmers with 90 different loading sports and no sport group controlling by important confounders. Then chapter 5, manuscript 2, to compare the long term of swimming, no impact sports, basketball, karate, and judo, and no sport group on ABMD and BMAD accrual in adolescents over a period of 18 months. Manuscript 3, to compare the physical activity and the sedentary behavior of swimmers with high training volume and a no sport group, and to compare ABMD gains between swimmers with a higher and lower moderate vigorous physical activity outside the training water. Manuscript 4, to compare the inflammatory markers between swimmers and no sport groups, besides to analyze the potential mediation effect of inflammatory markers in the association between training load and ABMD in adolescent swimmers. And in manuscript 5, to analyze longitudinally the combined impact of engagement in resistance training and sports participation on ABMD accrual among adolescent athletes of swimming and spec sports. About the methods of my thesis, the study design firstly. This is a longitudinal design study developed inside an ongoing research project that's called Analysis of Behavior of Children During Growth, ABCD Growth Study. This study was performed in Presidente Prudente, a São Paulo state city, that is a middle-sized Brazilian city. And the ethical board of São Paulo State University approved the study. Just to show how was organized this thesis. This thesis was composed by 2 different studies. Firstly, the pilot ABCD growth study and the proper ABCD growth study. The pilot ABCD growth study started in 2013 and was used in 3 waves. And the proper ABCD growth study that started in 2016, finished in 2018-19, and we used also 3 waves. About the sample size estimations for this PhD thesis. The sample size estimation was constructed based on the bone mineral density gains of 0.05 grams square centimeters, with a standard deviation of 0.07 grams by square centimeters, a power of 80%, alpha of 5%, and in this sense, the minimal sample size for conduction of the study was estimated in 15 adolescents each group. However, considering that the results are presented with using different statistical analysis, we also create a sample size estimation in each chapter of the thesis. Each manuscript also presents a specific sample size estimation. About the sample and inclusion criteria, the age of the adolescent should be between 9 and 19 years at baseline, currently not taking medication that can affect bone metabolism, a minimum of 6 months of participation in the specific sports for the sport group, a no environment in organized sports, that means presence of coaching, training, routine, and competitions for no sport group, and the consent forms be signed by parents and guardians of the participants. So in this sense, considering the pilot ABCD and the ABCD growth study, from 2013 to 2018, the sample was composed by 625 adolescents that was split in 2 groups, a sport group and a no sport group. The sport group was composed by 10 different sports modalities that were basketball, soccer, swimming, volleyball, karate, judo, swing, kung fu, baseball, and gymnastics, and lastly, track and field. These are just a picture of the sport teams that was composed this thesis. About the presentation of the results in each chapter, considering the data available in each wave and the information we would like to use to answer the thesis objective, we use this flowchart show the waves that was used in each chapter of manuscript. For example, when I have here the manuscript 1 used the first wave from the pilot ABCD until the second wave of the ABCD growth study. For example, the manuscript 5 used the first wave of the ABCD and the second wave of ABCD. This difference of use of waves was happened considering the data available, the missing data in each wave. So in this sense, considering that, like I said before, we have a different number of adolescents, a different numbers of sports in each manuscript presented in this thesis. And this is possible to see in the flow chart. About the experimental design of the study. In a normal routine, data collection took place following the respective process. Firstly, the adolescent has received the invitation to participate in the study. After that, delivery of the consent and assent forms, the adolescent registration in the ABCD database, the measurements at the university's laboratory, blood test and accelerometer scheduling, blood collection, as measurements of habitual physical activity, and lastly, a delivery of the results. About the study variables. Firstly, if the adolescent was not part of a sport group, they composed the control group, no sport group. But if the adolescent report, yes, I'm a member of a sport group, a sport team, they were asked, how long have you been practicing this sport? How many days a week do you practice this sport? And the last, how long a day do you train this sport? The multiplication between days a week by time per day of training allowed to calculate the weekly training volume of the athlete. The anthropometry was assessed the height, sitting height, and body mass of the adolescent using a specific methods. The somatic maturation, the biological maturation was estimated using a somatic maturation equation proposed by Moore et al. In 2015. Using this equation, is possible to find the years from the peak high velocity. This measurement denotes the distance in years from the peak high velocity, a landmark somatic maturation that is considering the period of maximum growth in structure of the adolescent. And it's important to remember that this period, the peak high velocity, precedes the peak of bone density of the adolescence. Just in summary, the negative value of this variable denotes that the individual has not yet passed the peak high velocity. Positive values denote that the individual has already passed the peak high velocity. And lastly, the zero value denotes the individual is on the peak high velocity in the exactly time of the measurement. The ABND, BMC, and soft tissue profiles. We analyze this variable using a dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, the model Lunar DPX NT and the Lunar Prodigy, and a whole body scan was performed by a trained research following the manufacturer guidelines. We analyzed the lean soft tissue, that is, sum of all tissues, bone-free and fat-free, the fat mass of the adolescent, and lastly, the RL bone mineral density and the content, total and regional. The regional analysis of ABND and BMC of upper limbs, lower limbs, spine, and total body mass head was performed following previous studies and respecting some anatomic points. And the BAMAD, that is bone mineral apparent density, is an approach to estimate the volumetric interpretation of bone mineral density and remove the size difference, because we know, besides the analysis of BNBB in grams square centimeters, we know that the size can affect this variable. For this reason, we also checked the BMAD of the adolescent by the equation proposed by Katzman et al. The physical activity and sedentary behavior of the adolescent was assessed by the Polar V800 model, and the adolescent used this equipment during 90 days, excluding the first and the last day. In this sense, we used specifically 7 days, 5 weekdays and 2 weekend days. And the adolescent was instructed to remove the watch only during the swimming training, to check, because our intention was to check the physical activity performed outside the swimming training pool, or when there would be a risk of injury for the adolescent. In summary, the device provided a daily information about sleeping time, step counts, sitting time, light physical activity, moderate physical activity, vigorous physical activity. And the moderate vigorous physical activity, MEVPA, was calculated by the sum of the moderate and vigorous intensity, while the sedentary behavior was determined by the sitting time of the adolescent. About the training load was assessed using a training load notebook when the adolescent had a Borg rating adapted by Foster and hours training per day during all entire month. In this sense, the adolescent received this training notebook and received the recommendation to answer the notebook 30 minutes after the training, considering the guidance of the another studies. the advice of other studies. And they responded during 1 month that precedes the data collection of the baseline, and warming up and cooling down were also considered. In this sense, the training notebook gave it to us 2 variables, volume and intensity. The volume were the hours trained, and intensity, the Foster scale. The multiplication between these 2 variables gave it to us the daily training volume, and the multiplication of the sum of all daily training load gave it to us the monthly training load that was used in this thesis. The vitamin D consumptions was the adolescent report the frequency of the consumption of each food in the week prior to the data collection using a Likert scale. And about the resistance training of the adolescent, the engagement in resistance training was assessed through a dichotomic question, yes, no, by a face-to-face interview conducted by a research at baseline measurements. And was asked 2 questions. Do you practice resistance training? If the adolescent answered yes, was asked, how long have you been practicing resistance training? And generally, how many days a week do you practice resistance training? About blood variables, a trained nurse from a clinical analysis laboratory collected venous blood samples, and all collection were performed in the morning with a fast for 8 hours and respecting the manual of the collectors in laboratory clinic. The variables was analyzed. Calcium, 25 hydroxyvitamin D, osteocalcin, CTX, growth hormone, EGF1, insulin-like growth factor 1, lymphocytes, CD4 and lymphocytes T, CD4 and CD8, CRP, that is C-reactive protein, and lastly, the interleukin 6. The statistical analysis used in this thesis, the data distribution was analyzed using Kolmogorov-Smirnov and Shapiro-Wilk test, variables expressed as mean value, standard deviation, and 95% confidence interval. All statistical analyses were performed using SPSS statistical softwares and Stata software. The level of statistical significance was set at p-value less than 0.05, and specific statistical analysis carried in each study is present in each chapter of the thesis. Now I will start to present the results of my thesis. First, the chapter 4 that aimed to compare the bone mineral density and soft tissue profiles of swimmers with 9 different loading sports and a no-sport group controlling for important confounders. This study has been published in Medicine and Science in Sport and Exercise. This study, the statistical analysis of this study was composed by comparison of dependent variables among groups were performed by using generalized estimation equation model, GEE, and Bonferroni-Poisson test. Specifically, when compared bone density variables, the models were adjusted for sex, peak high velocity status, lean soft tissue, fat mass, and weekly training volume of the athlete. And to quantify the difference, the results were presented by using the percentage of the difference. This table 1 is just to show the descriptive characteristics of the sample, and the total sample of this manuscript was composed by 625 adolescents. In this figure, we compared the fat mass and the lean soft tissue among all the groups, and it was possible to see that swimmer was a group with a higher amount of lean soft tissue. And like I said in the introduction, we know the lean soft tissue is important for bone adaptation. However, besides the high amount of lean soft tissue in the swimmers, when you see the effect or the comparison of AB and B between swimmers and another groups, Swimmers had the lowest value of APMD in whole body, spine, and lower limbs compared with 9 different sports modalities. In other words, despite the swimmers had a higher amount of limb soft tissue, they showed the lowest value of APMD. And we analyzed these comparisons considering the volumetric interpretation of the bone and in whole body scan, less head, was possible to see again that swimming presented the lowest value of bone mineral density. The chapter 5 that aimed to compare the long term of swimming, no impact sports, impact sports, basketball, karate, and judo, and no sport group on APMD and BMAT accrue in adolescents of over a period of 18 months. This study has been published in the scientific journal Archives of Osteoporosis. The statistical analysis of this study was composed by analysis of variance, ANOVA, to perform the initial comparisons between groups using a post hoc test of Bonferroni. ANOVA repeated measurements considering 2 groups and 3 time points was used to comparisons in APMD accrue at different skeletal sites at adjustment for age, peak, high velocity, lean soft tissue of the specific sites, volume of training, practice of resistance training, fat mass, height, vitamin D intake, and sex, considering the importance of these variables in previous studies, and the difference among groups observed through confidence interval. Again, table 1 is just to show the descriptive characteristics of the sample, as a total sample of 71 adolescents. In the figure 2, it's possible to see the bone mineral density accrue over a period of 18 months between the groups. We can see here the control group, we can see here the impact group, and this one, swimming group. Was possible to see that in the figures, swimmers indeed present a lower bone mineral density accrual compared with another groups, and difference between bone mineral density in some points, exactly times. For example, here in whole body in 90 months. And we found an interaction between time and sports in upper limbs and whole body, less head. What this means? When you see during 18 months, we have the effect of time change the bone mineral density. However, we also have the effect of the group. In the sense, we have the lower gain of bone mineral density in swimmers. Again, we checked the effect of swimmings and sports group in a whole body during 18 months. However, considering a volumetric interpretation again. And when we perform a volumetric interpretation, we see better this effect of swimming on bone. If you have a look, we have an increased impact sports. In another way, in swimmers, we don't increase the bone mineral density after adjustment by the cover rates, like I said before. In this sense, we also found an interaction between time and sport. The chapter 6 that aimed to compare the physical activity and the sedentary behavior of swimmers with a high training volume and a no sport group, and to compare APMD gains between swimmers with higher and lower moderate vigorous physical activity outside of training in water. This manuscript is under construction and now it has been correction by 4 submissions to improve the paper. The statistical analysis was composed by GEE model. A PA comparison was tested by the interaction between groups, swimming and no sport group, and sex, male and female, to check if the part of this variable was different considering the sex and the group. And lastly, the analysis of covariance ANCOVA was performed to compare ABMD changes after 12 months between swimmers by median of moderate vigorous physical activity. Standard error of the mean was used to calculate the standard deviation of the adjusted means of the equation. Using the mean and standard deviation and number of the adolescent sample was calculated the co-ASD effect size of difference using the cutoff points presented in the literature. The table 1 is presented the descriptive characteristics of the sample again with a number of 57 adolescents. And in the figure 1, we showed the comparison of physical activity partners and sedentary behavior of swimmers. And it was possible to see that, indeed, in like physical activity, sport group present a high amount of physical activity. However, we know that the physical activity most important for bony tissue is the moderate and vigorous physical activity. And when you see the moderate physical activity, the group was similar, but in vigorous physical activity, different of our hypothesis, swimmers present a higher physical activity compared with a no-sport group. And we didn't find difference in moderate vigorous physical activity and in sitting time. And also, we didn't find interactions between group, swim, and sport group, and sex. Chapter 7 aimed to compare bone, anabolic, and inflammatory markers between swimmers and a no-sport group, besides to analyze the potential mediator effect of inflammatory markers in the association between training load and ABMD in adolescent swimmers. In this manuscript, the statistical analysis was composed by GEE to compare variables between groups, applying the linear or gamma scale response when appropriate. Pearson correlation expressed as R to analyze the association between independent, mediator, and dependent variables. And lastly, the mediation analysis were performed using a model proposed by Valerie and Van der Rijn in 2013, applying Med4A command on the data. All the mediation analysis was adjusted by chronological age and age of peak high velocity. Just to explain better about this mediation model. This mediation model, we have the total effect of training load on ABMD, okay? This is decomposed in two models. The direct effect, that means, in red line, association of training load and ABMD through pathways not related to inflammatory markers, and indirect effect, in other words, the association of training load and ABMD mediated by the inflammatory markers, in this case, IL-6 or CRP. But this model is also possible to check the reference interaction, that means the association of training load and ABMD due to the interaction with inflammatory markers, and lastly, the mediation, sorry, this is a mistake, the mediation interaction, this is the association between training load and ABMD due to both mediation and interaction between inflammatory markers. In this manuscript, we also have the descriptive characteristics of the sample with a number of 61 adolescents, and we do the comparisons between swimming group and the no sport group. Firstly, the bone mineral density. Swimmers present, indeed, less bone mineral density, lower bone mineral density in lower limbs, total spine, and the whole body less head compared with a no sport group. However, in another way, when you have a look in bone markers, swimmers had a higher concentration of calcium and hydroxyvitamin D. When you see hormones, swimmers also presented a higher amount of IGF-1. And lastly, in comparisons of inflammatory markers and immunological markers, the groups didn't show difference between them. This is the mediation model, and it's possible to see, I explained before, the total effect, the direct effect, and the indirect effect. It's possible to see that we had a direct effect between training load and BMD in lower limbs and total body mass head when we considering the IL-6 in the model, and when you considering the CRP in the model, you have the direct effect in all body sites, upper limbs, lower limbs, spine, and total body mass head. This shows that this association between training load and ABMD is not explained by the inflammatory markers. It's possible to see this because we didn't have a significant indirect effect of IL-6 and bone mineral density, and we didn't also have effect of CRP mediation the model. And the chapter 7, manuscript 4, manuscript 5, aimed to analyze longitudinally the combined effect of engagement in resistance training and sports participation on ABMD accrual among adolescents, swimmers, and impact sports. This statistical analysis was composed by crude comparisons between groups through the independent test T sample, test T, and mean Whitney test, comparisons of ABMD accrual considering the engagement of resistance training was performed using also GEE, in which of the comparisons were controlled by peak high velocity, sex, and ABMD at baseline of each segment. And lastly, the estimated means from GEE were also used to analyze the bone accrual between groups over 12 months by trained analysis, considering the confidence interval between the groups. Again, we have the descriptive characteristics of the sample in a total sample of 85 adolescents. And in table 2, it's possible to see the bone mineral density of each group: impact sport plus resistance training, impact sports alone, swimming plus resistance training, and swimming alone at baseline, follow-up, mean of change, and the mean of change adjusted. It's possible to see all groups increased the bone mineral density during 12 months. However, just in swimmers, regardless the engagement of a resistance training, they didn't present the gains of bone mineral density in spine after 12 months of follow-up. And in the figure 2, it's possible to see the comparisons of BMD changes after 1 year by sports practice. What's possible to see, if you see the gray color is the sport plus resistance training, and the white color is the sport alone. In upper limbs, in arms, swimmers plus resistance training gain more bone mineral density compared with the swimmers that perform just swimmer alone. When you see, the upper limbs was similar, spine, they don't. And lastly, the whole body less head, again, the swimmer that perform resistance training gain more bone mineral density compared with the swimmer perform just the sport. In another way, when you see the impact sports, the groups presented similar bone mineral density. The sport group, impact sports group plus resistance training, and the impact sports group alone. So, in conclusion, this thesis is the first study documented in the literature to compare bone mineral density of adolescent swimmers with 9 different load sports and for a long-term period, 12 months. Besides that, it was analyzed for the first time the hypothesis that could justify the low bone mineral density in this group. The findings indicate that despite the high amount of lean soft tissue, swimmers presented lower ABMD and BMAD compared with sports of different mechanical load, and no sport group in the most body size. During 18 months of follow-up, swimmers had a similar and lower ABMD and BMAD compared with the control group, dependent of the body site, on the body site. Differently of the initial hypothesis that the swimmers that train for at least 90 hours a week didn't present lower moderate vigorous physical activity or higher sedentary behaviors compared with a no sport group. And besides that, swimmers did not show changes in bone and inflammatory markers. And besides that, inflammatory variables did not mediate the negative association between training load and BMD of the swimmers. And lastly, where despite the high lean soft tissue muscle mass, swimmers need to have a higher concentration of muscle in each bone unit. This can happen because considering mainly doing the low mechanical strain during the training in the water, high number of cycles in the strokes without rest, and lastly, the absence of eccentric muscle contractions. In another way, the engagement in resistance training seems to boost the bone mineral density accrual in adolescent swimmers. Thus, could be a good strategy
I think he's not here now.
No, I think the connection of the UNESCO Romulo is broken, but the presentation by Ricardo in his screen, we can hear him. We can see him. Ricardo, right, if you unmute your laptop, because it's muted.
Hi, Ricardo.
We can't hear you.
We can hear you, yes.
We still can't hear you.
Think the problem was in the other connection of the
So,
computer.
Ricardo, can you please unmute your laptop? Because from your laptop, you're muted. Yeah. Okay, yeah. We can hear you from your laptop, but not from the main screen, but that's fine. So if you can finish your presentation by just finalizing the direction for future studies using your laptop, then that should be fine. Okay, yeah. Give it a go, yeah.
Can you hear me again? In another.
There is a noise.
Mute the notebook.
Yeah, again, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's okay.
Okay, let's finish. To use more accurate methods, mainly to assess and control physical activity and biological maturations. So, I would like to thank you, everyone, and some acknowledgement. I would like to also thank my supervisors, Professor Romulo Fernandes at UNESCO, Dr. Dimitri Vahopoulos at University of Exeter, all the adolescents, parents, and coaches of the study, ABCD Growth Study, the data collection team of the ABCD Growth Study, my evaluation board, Dr. Manuel João from University of Coimbra, Dr. Renato Billiman from Universidade Federal de Pelotas, Dr. Bruna Turi Lynch from the Lander University, and Dr. Luis Alberto Gobo from the UNESP. I also would like to thank the FAPESP, São Paulo Research Foundation, for founding my PhD and my PhD research project abroad. The GCRAF, my research group at the UNESP, and the Children's Health and Exercise Research Center at University of Exeter. Thank you.
Well done, Ricardo. Thank you for the timely presentation. We can move now to the first examiner questions and discussion. So, Manuel, the word is yours. So you can start the questions and the discussion with Ricardo.
Thank you all. And first of all, let me have shortly my congratulations for the candidate and my warm regards for the members of the board, namely Dimitris Vlachopoulos. It's a pleasure for me to share this examination with you. Also, let me extend my warm regards to Renata Billman, Bruna Lynch, respectively from Pelotas and London University. And obviously, I have good colleagues in Presidente Prudente at São Paulo, Brazil, respectively Professor Romulo Fernandes, who is from the same generation of Luis Gobo. They both are doing a great job in São Paulo, particularly in Presidente Prudente. I had the chance to confirm while in Presidente Prudente interact with personalities from the rectorship. They are very well recognized for the science they are doing. And my style today is not for concise questions. Those papers that are part of the thesis were published and they were already exposed to referees. And my main interest is to interact intellectually with the candidate. I want to know your opinion about certain topics. Obviously, you have done a great job, but this project started 4 or 5 years ago. Your research project, obviously, the ABCD started in 2013, which means 8 years ago. And I would like to discuss with the candidate, which is different to just have a look on the doctoral thesis. Ricardo, you mentioned ABCD growth study. You presented the project, but I would like briefly you to present me the concepts of growth and biological maturation briefly, because for me it is essential to follow my exposition. Please.
Professor, firstly, maturation is the process to be mature. And about the growth is the process you will during your life until your adulthood, and when you have the growth of your tissues. However, the difference of growth and development, and that the growth is just physical, and the development includes the other variables outside the just physical variables.
Good. My question is, when you decide to study growth, what is missing in this final report of the project is the growth charts. We need to plot those kids who participate in this research project. We need to plot them in the percentiles from the Center for Disease Control, or alternatively to plot individually and as a group on the World Health Organization standards. And obviously, this project that permitted your thesis, why you consider the somatic indicator of somatic maturation? Wait, Wait a little. Many studies from your doctoral thesis, the age range from 9 to 17. Do you remember if the equation proposed by Moore, which you have used it, is equally valid over that large period? What would be the alternatives if you start now the same project?
Professor, if I started now the same project, what I would like to do is just to considering our boys or girls, not to adjust the analysis by sex, and considering the biological maturation, considering the limitation of the peak high velocity outside the band, +1 and -1, I would try to compare just groups around the peak high velocity to avoid underestimation of the correct value of peak high velocity. I agree with you that considering I have an adolescent with 10 years old, I have a limitation to use this method. In the sense, if I could perform again, I prefer to use just adolescents around the peak high velocity, -1 and +1, considering the paper published by Professor Malina in Sports Medicine.
Later on, you use the terms adolescence and puberty. Are they synonymous?
No.
Please clarify the audience. Clarify the audience, please.
Professor, considering the World Health Organization, adolescence is between 10 to 19 years old. Considering the puberty is a process to be mature. That's when you have a lot of sexual maturation happen.
Okay. My main concern regarding the choice to use an indicator of somatic maturation, that is an estimation of age at peak high velocity, based on the equation of Moore, which is nice. Moore is a good colleague. Sarah Moore is a good colleague. I have 2 pending papers with Sarah Moore. That's not the problem. The question is that height and weight, stature and body mass are used to predict the indicator of somatic maturation. You use stature to obtain bone mineral apparent density, and later on, so stature is in the independent and interdependent variable. Okay, that's my unique concern. We are entering the same variable in the starting point and ending point. That's just my opinion, and I believe that based on publications in Journal Sports Science 2013 and 2014, separately for males and females, longitudinal studies who permitted the exact estimation of age at peak high velocity, they reasonably fit the algorithm, but they evidenced that the algorithm from Sarah Moore is problematic before 12 years and after 15 years. And you correctly updated your position that this study in the future, the next generation of studies in President-Prudente, should consider narrow age variation. And you also mentioned that you would consider why adopting and selecting males and females. Would you expect in your different studies different results if all your study, all your manuscripts would be done just with males? In many ways, I do not have the chance to distinguish the effect is sex specific or not. if you have the chance, just intellectually, don't feel criticize it. Just with your intellectual talk about if those studies with mediation, with a follow-up, what you would expect if you were only studying males or only studying females.
Please. This is an important question. Thank you for that. I believe the results could be similar, but the magnitude would be different, considering that in maturation, the boys have more lean soft tissue, gain more bone mineral density. But in my opinion, the results could be similar, but the magnitude would be different between boys and girls. But when I adjust the model like I did, I think I can confuse in the model. I don't control, not confuse it. I didn't control exactly this effect. I just performed that mathematical approach. However, I think that the results could be similar, but with different magnitudes.
You calculated sample power. That's nice. Congratulations. But at the end, you decided to select no more than 17 participants per group. Let me have your opinion between sample power and parametric statistics. Because parametric statistics, we work with the mean and standard deviation. And when you decide a large chronological age group, 9-17, you have a huge standard deviation on your outcome variables. And with the decision to include such variation in the group with only 17 cases, bone tissue, I suspect that bone tissue is too slow for modifications. Please, let me have your opinion and what you would correct in the future.
Professor, thank you again. Yes, I agree. In some manuscript, the first manuscript, I have a high number of adolescents. However, in the last manuscript, the fourth manuscript, I have a small sample size. When I have a small sample size, I also have a higher confidence interval. I agree with you that considering this small sample size, mainly, I didn't find some effect, some difference, because I had this higher confidence interval, because the age was massive in my sample. Like I said before, considering that, what I to increase my sample size, trying to check better this effect of swim on bone density, and also increase the longitudinal time of the analysis, not just 18 months, 2 years, 3 years of follow-up if it's possible. This is what I would do if it was possible.
Good. Ricardo, do you remember that you decided to use whole body, bone mineral density, less head? Okay? You remember? To subtract the head at a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old boy would have the same impact of subtracting the head on a 17-year-old boy or girl. And because growth is a allometric process, and subtracting the head and afterwards to calculate annual gains in bone mineral density or annual gains that are affected by the correction of the less head. Did you follow my question? That I don't know if it is correct to have the whole body less head correction at the different ages, exactly on the same mode, and I don't know if we need or not to adopt allometric adjustment.
Professor, I understand your question. I selected this option to remove the head because this is a guidance from the International Society of Clinical Densitometry when you have a look whole body scan in children and the adolescents, considering the process of bone mass accrual is different, and the head is not affected by the sport, by the intervention, physical size intervention. However, I need to be honest. I'm not sure if I put the head in the model would be better. What I did was just remove the head to use. I have the area bone and I have the bone mineral content, and I analyze these two things without considering the head. I don't know if you agree with me, but if I put the head in the model, I could incite an effect that was not generated by exercise.
So, while calculating the bone mineral apparent density, I read from in your thesis, it is bone mineral content divided by squared bone area, which is divided by stature.
Yes.
Stature with or without head?
This case with head.
And what is your opinion? We probably in children may obtain bone mineral apparent density without a head. Probably. We need to test, because the head is 12% in adult and the head is 15 or 17% in a 9-year-old kid. The proportionality of the head in a 9-year-old kid is different from typically the proportionality of the head in an adult. Just a discussion to test. You have the data, you may reorganize the data. And I also contact with another formula to obtain bone mineral apparent density, which means bone mineral density divided by the squared bone area. Is that correct? There are two formulas. Am I correct or not?
For bone mineral density and apparent density, bone mineral apparent density.
To obtain bone mineral apparent density, you have two concurrent formulas. The one you use and another one that was published in Osteoporosis International. Do you have any rationale to help me in the future to select the best option or not?
Professor, to be honest, I need to read better this another option and to check how is the results of that to select this one. I selected the cat other manuscript, and for this reason I prefer to use this one. And what I saw in the manuscript, they said to use considering the stature, not to remove the head. But my main question is, what you could do is to analyze the head length and remove this of stature and use the equation. This is the idea.
Ricardo, let's moving on. One headline in your literature review, is devoted to the assessment protocols. And you mentioned dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. You mentioned quantitative computed tomography and quantitative ultrasound. Would you summarize how they apply for an ethics committee and how they apply for children and youth? Which you recommend your position statement, please.
Professor, you understand very well the question. I didn't use this very well, but just use DXA.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know. But you have analysis, and you are receiving the title of an expert, and you may participate in an ethics committee. And yes, I would like to listen your opinion about those alternatives that you decided to introduce in your review of the literature. Mention dual energy X-ray is different from quantitative computed tomography, which is different from quantitative ultrasound. Many people that is following you today probably decide in the future to use an alternative method. What is your opinion? If you have nothing wrong, if you decide to assume that it is out of your scopus.
Professor, perfect. Firstly, about the DXA. the International Society of Clinical Densitometry, they advise to use the DXA in adolescents with a distance of minimal 6 months. This is the guidelines for the pediatric population. And we know that the X-ray from the DXA is very slow. It's very slow, but we need to respect 6 months of difference. I believe if you respect the 6 months of difference, the minimal between the measurements, we could also to insert the peak high velocity without a harm effect in the health of the adolescent.
Yes, and quantitative ultrasound, I believe the operator is a problem, and also the quantitative computed tomography is much more invasive than DEXA.
Yeah.
It is my perception, but good. I also have to ask you, when you decided to include in your research proposal a bit of physical activity, you decided for a polar, a watch. This was used, for example, in the University of Exeter a long time ago by Professor Neil Armstrong. What was the amount of time that kids spend above 150 beats per minute? But in your case, you are more interested on mechanical indicators of physical activity or on heart rate responsivity during entire day. Please use the watch because it was the device you have available in your research unit, or you recommend to adopt other devices to measure a bit of physical activity. And please, you may combine this. If I perceive that you follow my question and you have the answer, and also add, why not to include an autonomic nervous system, for example, heart rate variability, to see how do you would include heart rate variability as an indicator of autonomic nervous system in your rationale, in your studies, particularly the one who considered inflammatory markers. Do you follow my question?
I believe yes, Professor. I believe.
Please
yes.
go ahead. Go ahead. You are doing very well.
Professor, about the first comment, yes, the polar was the model available to use, because the Professor Holm would like to use the polar to control the intensity of the exercise of the adolescents doing the sports. For this reason, we used the polar, because I didn't have another option. However, my advice for the new studies was to use the ActGraph, because the polar was impossible to analyze the counts, to analyze the cutoff points. The polar didn't give for us this option. We're trying to contact polar, and they said to us, this is a privacy information. We can't give it to you. This is the first important point. Polar has limitations, and I agree with that. I would use ActGraph. And about another options, I agree totally with you. We didn't considering these autonomic variables in my project. I don't know why. I think I didn't have this rationale, this option in my mind, but could be a good option. If I'm not wrong, the ABCD will start to analyze these variables in this way in 2022. However, I agree, I don't have this information, and could be a good option considering inflammatory factors. But I didn't think about this possible in the past.
And I believe that the pattern of accumulation, fat accumulation, the pattern of fat accumulation, more in the trunk, more visceral, more in the limbs, upper and lower limbs, is probably mediated by the activation of the autonomic system. This is my perception. And also autonomic nervous system, in those kids who activate the autonomic nervous system, they will probably differ in terms of individual trajectories. Those who do not activate, they probably register more accentuated gains in bone tissue compared to the others. This is my perception. This is my hypothesis. It is critical to activate the autonomic nervous system during puberty growth spurt. This is my perception, and you need to continue to study. And you have very good ideas, and you demonstrate it. You have demonstrated today that you become competent. You have competencies in analytical terms and theoretical terms, and also dealing with the management of devices. Congratulations. And finally, I would like to listen you. What are the dynamics of the studies? You have all students like to have as much studies as they can, because you now are going to try to find a job. But my question is, what is the dynamics? How one study influenced the question of the following study, or they are independent parallel studies? Did you follow my question? What is the rationale between studies to have an overall conclusion? And again, congratulations, good job, and I hope you find a decent position in a university. And congratulations also to your extraordinary supervisors. Thank you, and with this, I conclude my participation.
Thank you for your thank you for your last question. Firstly, about to relation between the studies and relation between these studies with the future. When I was writing this thesis, I thought that I would do some things different. And to me, the main relationship between these variables, the studies were that I can see my problems. I can see the errors of the studies. And to me, these errors are important to improve the next manuscripts, the next studies in my life. These are a relationship I do. And about the relationship of this manuscript of the thesis, the conclusions thesis, what I tried to do was to use different manuscripts to answer the most important question, that was why if the swimmers could have another factors that explain the no osteogenic effect. This is the relationship of all the studies. To analyze, compare with different sports that we didn't have the literature with a high number of sports, compare with a long term, and checking another hypothesis. And lastly, to analyze the influence of a dry land training, because now the coach start to think about the importance of dry land training. And new studies, to me, need to start to think in perform clinical trials, analyze the effect of different approaches of dry land training. What I would like to do. Sorry, Professor.
I obtained permission for one more question. You have baseline 9 months and 18 months. Do you suppose linear intra-individual changes? And if not, how do you manage curvilinear changes over time? What you will do in the near future after getting a good position in a university?
Professor, in my opinion, I would expect a linear result. I would expect the same patterns of the intra-individual effects. Because if I control the variables, if I control the swimming group, the activities of they performed, and the impact sports group, I think the results will be similar over 2 years and 3 years. The most important would be to control the intensity, the volume of training of the swimmers of the other sports. This is the most important factor to have the similar results and to keep this intra-individual difference.
Finally, you used the scale proposed by Foster, and Foster adjusted the Borg scale. The Borg scale, the rationale is linked to heart rate intensity. while studying bone tissue, we probably need another indicator of training load, because bone is not metabolic responsiveness. Bone is accumulated mechanical impact. We may need to see how many steps the kids complete during a session and outside of the session. I suspect that the swimmers, they have more intensive training sessions and they have more resting outside of the training. The swimmers outside of the training, they tend to sit and sleep. Why? Because they practice more and with more intensity. And this is linked with your question, physical activity and sedentary behavior. The swimmers, they practice more and they have more sedentary behavior. Probably, this is my hypothesis. We need to measure how much steps they count in the trainings, outside of the trainings, and what is the contribution of daily amount of impacts and impacts due to training participation on intra-individual changes in bone tissue. This is my hypothesis, and I'm available to study with such good colleagues as I have the chance to contact in President Prudente. Thank you again. Professor Dimitrios, congratulations for the day and for your job with the candidate. I'm delighted to participate, and if I make some mistakes, please forgive me.
Professor, thank you very much for your comments. Thank you to accept our invitation. It's an honor to have you here, and thank you for the first opportunity you gave to me to come to Coimbra in 2016. You are part of that. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Manuel. That was honestly an excellent discussion during the examination process with really useful points that Ricardo needs to consider, both for the thesis and also for the development of the career. So it's really useful for him and I think for all of us. So this was excellent first examination. So if we all agree, we can move now to the second one. So if we can give the word to Renata Bieleman, so for the second part of the examination, and following that, we'll have a 15-minute break. So Renata, if you're happy, the floor and the questions are all yours, so you can discuss with Ricardo.
Okay, thank you. Good morning to everyone. Good evening to Romulo in Australia. I would like to say thank you to Ricardo for the invitation. Thank you to Dimitris and Romulo for the thank you and congratulations for the work supervising Ricardo. It's a pleasure to stay here again and to discuss this conclusion of the work. And I would like to send warm regards to Professor Bruna, Professor Manuel, Professor Bobo. Bobo, it's a pleasure to stay here with you as part of the evaluation board. I have just a few comments because part of the discussion proposed by Professor Manuel, we had discussed it in the qualification session as the polar limitations, as sample size limitations for certification of the sex, difference between boys and girls, and I don't have comments about this. All papers are relevant and show important results for the literature, even with limitations, especially concerning the sample size in some cases, for example, in some subgroup analysis. But your thesis has an excellent quality and fills important gaps of the literature in this field of sports and bone mineral density. the comments that I did in the qualification session were carefully analyzed for you, Ricardo, and my suggestions were solved as expected for this final work. I have just few comments in your paper number 2, your table 5.1, that you compare the adolescents who participated with the dropouts is not described in the results. You show only the table describing the sample, but not the table that you compare the participants with the dropout. It is not mentioned in the results.
Professor,
I don't know if it was published.
Professor, sorry, just about the manuscript 2, you mean a lot the table that I inserted to check the bias, in between the adolescents. Let me just open here. I remember I did the table 1. Yes, you asked me and I compared the remaining adolescents compared with dropout adolescents. However, I didn't put information about this in the text.
Yes.
Professor, I think I did, but I did it in methods. No, I don't. No, I did it in methods, not results.
Okay. I think it's important to be mentioned in the results because this is part of the results of the work.
Okay, I will do that.
Just
thank you.
To change the place. And when I was reading your paper number 4, one doubt I had is considering the dimensions of the dispersion of data, the standard deviation, and what is the training load, about the training load. Because you described it in the methods how to calculate the training load, the association, but not show the description of the training load.
Sorry.
I think you need to describe the average and the standard deviation of training load to show for your reader what are the difference between the groups concerning this training load. Because in this case, it will be possible to understand about the strength of association. You have, and I think it's important you mentioned in your discussion section in this paper too, not that your sample size is not a limitation, not only for the stratification of the analysis, according to spec of the adolescents, but also considering that the analysis you conducted only including the swimmers, and your sample size that you proposed in the beginning of your work was calculated based on the whole sample you had. And you conducted a subgroup analysis only using a part of your sample. And the number is really small. And you possibly could not to show some possible statistical associations because your sample size was small to show this part of the.
Professor, I agree with you, considering that the control group, they don't have a training load. In this sense, I agree. I have the comparison between the inflammatory, the body markers. However, when I perform the mediation models, I just insert the swimmers, and the sample size is 23, 24, and I need to discuss better this limitation. I agree. I really forgot to insert the training load on the table 1, but I will do that. But I agree. I need to explain better, to discuss better the limitation. Thank you. I will do that.
I had just these few comments. I would say thank you one more time for the invitation to have this discussion with you. I'd like to congratulate you, Ricardo, for your work. You had a good time in your doctorate degree. I think you enjoyed your way during your period. The doctorate is an important part of the career because it's the last part, is the final part of the graduation, and I think you made a good job. And I think your papers will be published in good journals, and you will have a high impact publication, a high impact scientific manuscript. Thank you so much for the invitation to stay here again, for Dimitris and Romulo. Congratulations to all for your work.
Professor, thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments, your qualification. I tried to address all of them and send the information for you of that. And thank you for mainly to take your time to read my work. You was selected because I appreciate your work, your job you did in your PhD as well. What was our honor. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Renato. That was really useful and technical and detailed points that Ricardo needs to think. So thanks a lot for your contribution, the questions in the process. So now, if we all agree, we can have a 10 or 15-minute break. So if it's 37, so we can say in 10 minutes to join back. So we can stretch a bit, just keep moving with physical activity to put some brain flow, to think again for more questions as part of the process. So we can meet back in 10 minutes. So we can move to Bruna and then to Gobo before we go to discuss in the separate room as part of the process. So thank you all, and we can meet back in 10 minutes.
Ricardo?
Romulo?
I think he is not.
No, he's not listening.
Yeah, don't worry.
Oh, he might be listening a bit. Yeah, he's listening.
Yeah, he's doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now. Oh, you are doing
Yes,
great.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah, great work, Ricardo, so far.
Thank you, Professor. I'm not listening you very well now. The people are talking in the room.
That's fine. That's fine.
Don't worry. Try to enjoy this 10, 15 minutes to relax.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
I'm go to the toilet. I'm back.
Yeah, go to the toilet, drink a bit of water, relax a bit, and then we'll be back, Ricardo. Romulo, you don't need to stay longer because it's quite late in Queensland. So, yeah. Up to you. You can
Oi, professor.
Posso perguntar, você vai mandar a tese para mim?
Eu mandei, professor, por e-mail.
Eu não recebi, cara. Really? Vai no banheiro.
Ricardo?
Yeah, admit I'm back.
You're right?
Yes, we can start again. I can just invite the
No,
people to
don't
return.
worry. We have 2 more minutes, so that's
Okay.
all right. In case, Ricardo, regarding the separate room to discuss with examiners and myself, do you want me to create another link so we can I can invite them all in the separate room, or?
Yes, I will create the room, and
Okay.
when people ask you to join,
Okay.
I will allow and leave the room.
Okay, that's right. That's perfect then. You're doing great. It's a really
Yes,
nice discussion. Well done. Okay, Ricardo, if you can invite them all back, and if we're all happy to return to the process, I think we can move to the third examiner, which is Bruna Lintz. Bruna, it's really nice to see you again. Hope you're doing all right, and the word and the floor is yours, so you can ask questions and discuss with Ricardo.
Thank you, Professor Dimitris, and thank you all for inviting me to be part of this process. I know Ricardo for a long time, and it is truly a pleasure to be here to contribute with this work. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay, so my contribution here, I hope to help a little bit to understand. My contribution is going to come as a former professional swimmer. I've been in the sport my whole life. I did swim for over 20 years of my life. My father is a swimming coach. If this research was conducted 20 years ago, I would be probably one of your participants. So I really believe that Ricardo has passion for this field. So if you're going to continue working with sports, I think these are some topics, not necessarily questions, but topics to consider. I don't think what I'm going to say, Ricardo, is going to change discussion of scientific papers, but these are some topics that I think you should keep in mind to reflect on moving on if you continue working with this topic and this population in the future. So my first question is, I don't really remember when I was in Presidente Prudente if you had this data available. Can you tell me a little bit more about the socioeconomic background of swimmers in other sports? And I'm asking this question because I did swim with this group before. And I know that the city of Presidente Prudente, the swimming team there, is the main characteristic is of being on the low income spectrum. And this would affect body composition and so on. So going back to my question, can you tell me, you don't need to be specific on the thing, but could you tell that there was a socioeconomic difference between the sports that are composing your sample?
Professor, firstly, thank you for a question. Yes, I completely agree that there are difference in socioeconomic factors in our groups, because we have some sports, they just people with high income can perform compared with another sports. It's possible to see this in swimming compared to soccer, for example. But unfortunately, I don't have this information. We are having this discussion in our research group because we didn't control the nutritional intake of the adolescent, and this is related with the socioeconomic condition of the adolescent. But unfortunately, I don't have this information to try at least to control that in the statistical modulus. I will talk with Professor Holman and other members to try to put like a questionnaire to analyze that. I think it's possible, it's not difficult to insert one more sheet in the questionnaire to analyze this variable, but it's a limitation. Yeah, they need to consider this limitation in the studies.
Yeah, and I just want to make it very clear, the accessibility of swimming, at least in Presidente Prudente, compared to other sports, might be very different. I called my dad yesterday to confirm that they still live in the same reality, and my father still goes to all the tournaments and talks to the head coach, and he said that, yes, the costs are almost totally, if not totally, covered by the local government or by sponsors. So it would be maybe a bias that people with lower socioeconomic background are inserted in swimming, and this might be a determinant of BMD, other than the training load, other than the gravity environment, and so on. Okay, so just to keep it in mind, I know that Presidente Prudente have some very wealthy families, and if this is your status, you are probably not swimming with Coach Pepe. You're going to be swimming somewhere else. So this is something to consider for the future, because nutrition, body composition, ethnicity will affect BMD. That is the main focus of your work and your research. Another point that I would like, it's not specific of any paper, but it might be something for you to think about for the future. What is the reality of the other sports compared to swimming in terms of the level of competition? Did you feel that the swimmers, and I know this for a fact, the swimmers are seeking regional, state, and national level competitions? They participate on what is the best in the country. I cannot say the same for gymnastics or soccer or baseball, or so this, in my head, sometimes we are not comparing apples with apples. Sometimes we are comparing apples with pineapples. So tell me, what is your perception on the level, the competitive level of swimmers versus other sports?
Yes, Professor, I agree sometimes that we compare different fruits in the analysis. We have a limitation to perform studies in Presidente Prudente because it's not a big city. We don't have many options of the sports modalities. And I agree, some sports, they perform a regional competition, that swimmer have a national competition. I had this issue mainly in the manuscript published in the Medicine Science, Sport Exercise. What we tried to do was advice from Professor Alan Bark in the University of Exeter. He said to me, please try to adjust by training volume, at least to reduce this difference of engagement. But I agree that just by training volume don't fix
Not
all
enough.
the problem. It's not enough. But it's hard. What we can do is just to compare 2 or 3 groups. But in Presidente Prudente, I'm not sure if I have another sports with a level of competition and the level of training routine that we have in swimming. I'm not sure if we have another sports here. What we could do is trying to perform different studies in different cities with connections and compare different sports. However, we have a limitation to use different measurement machines. That is a problem as well. But could be an option. Maybe we can do, okay, I have swimmers here, you have foot soccer and gymnastics, another seat at a high level. Let's compare them. But in Presidente Prudente, just to using the mathematical models was the possible we figure it out to control that.
Yeah, I know, because I literally live this, that we have at least 3 different levels. So, or you are a youth participating in sports and you play and you go to school, and this is one reality. Then when you are in the collegiate level, you take things more serious, but then your bone mineral crew phase is already done, but then this is in a different type of training load. And then you might become a professional swimmer. That is also a different reality. And I'm not sure if the swimming group that you have in your sample, I would believe that they are in a different level than, in my head, it comes baseball. Like, what kind of training do they do? I don't think it's comparable to the training that the swimmers do. And it's not a critic. I'm not saying that your analyses are wrong at all. I'm just saying that they are different groups, for sure. Another, just a few more topics that I will give it to you. Another thing to consider, Ricardo, as now as a coach or an athlete, I would say, depending on your status as an athlete, what is your swimming race, what is your age, what is your body type, and this is more specific. I think this is specific on a paper. The last paper you talk about engaging in resistance training, correct? Try to address the bone mineral density gap. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. So just as an athlete or coach perspective, I was a 50 meters or 100 meters freestyle swimmer. If you would tell me that at 12, 13 years old, or even before that I should engage in resistance training to look on my bone health, I would say thank you, but no thank you, because I remember feeling heavy, feeling bulky, feeling stiff in the water. So now my question is, I know that we are trying to always do the best for the athletes because they are human beings first. But what is the number one objective of these people? Like, do the coaches really want to focus on BMD? That might be a problem 40 years from now. Or do I need to focus on performance? Because maybe the chance of that specific child to get a scholarship to go to college in resistance training is making her swim slower. It's not an option anymore. Okay, so I know that this is and that's what I tell here when I'm teaching and my students want to engage in research with athletes. I said athletes are a very different population and a unique population, because if you start messing with practice and there's so much superstition as well involved, you are going away from their objective, and their objective is performance. And I'm telling you, if you would tell me that my BMD was low and you say, hey, Bruna, you need to engage in resistance training, I say, nope, I have a chance to be part of the national team. Thank you, but I will continue swimming, because swimming, the principle of specificity, is the one that matters most to me. I'm not worried about my BMD when I'm 70 years old.
Professor, I agree with you. This is an important question for our subject because we need connect the research life with the real life, what the codes want to have. I agree with you completely that. In my opinion, when you perform research, we can try to check, to perform, to compare different models of interventions. However, in my opinion, what you could do, what you need to do is to propose for the coach different intervention that also improve the swim performance. I will have just for example for you. When you perform a resistance training, you can increase the bone strength that is important for the stroke and also to decrease the injury in the athlete. And I read recently a manuscript. They analyze the effect of plyometric exercise, the effect of that when the athlete leave the block to jump in the water. And they saw that intervention using plyometric exercise can improve the velocity and the power when the athlete leave the block because they have an increase of the strength in the muscles in the lower limbs. And we have in literature, Dimitris tested this hypothesis in his thesis that plyometric exercise is an effectivity for the bone health. In this reason, okay, we have an option. We have an option that can help the athlete to improve the performance and can help also the bone health. But I agree with you, the approach for the coach, for the athletes is performance. But we can try also to include some interventions that also can improve the bone health. This is what I think what we can do. Because you swim a long time in your life, and in 30 years ago, the swimmers didn't do his dry land training, nothing, just water. And now they are considering this training to improve the performance. And maybe you think, I will improve the performance, however, I try also to improve the bone of this adolescent. But the focus of the adolescent, focus of the coach is the performance. The professor Marcelo Papote from the University of São Paulo, he tested some hypotheses about this. Swimmers can't have a heavy bone, but they saw it's not a massive effect on the swimming training. The point is how long in the day they will expending time to perform bone, to improve bone. They don't want to improve bone, but if you improve the performance and secondly, to improve bone, perfect. This is the idea. You need to test different hypotheses, different dry land training, and to analyze also performance effect of this dry land training as well.
Yeah, it is not like if you were born to be a little lizard, you're not going to become a dinosaur. I know that, but it was the feeling in the water. Like I vividly remember after resistance training, feeling a lot slower in the water, and it would really matter to me. And that's why, if I could, I would skip the resistance training every day. So it is a matter of different interventions, as you mentioned. It needs to be tailored to the athlete's specialty, to their body type. But maybe plyometric would apply great with me, because resistance didn't do wonders. I can tell you. And now more a personal questions about your routine. Would you wanna continue in this field, Ricardo, of working with athletes in the future? I know that we don't have a crystal ball.
Professor, I didn't follow your question. Sorry, can you repeat?
Would you like to continue research on this field in the future?
Yes, if it's possible, I would like to keep working this field, mainly with bone. Yes, I would like, but with the swimmers, I think the next step is to perform also clinical trial to analyze the dry land training, because the resistance training, I didn't control everything. I didn't control the training. This is limitation. I just asked, do you practice? Yes or no? I didn't know if the adolescent performed twice, three times a week, every day. The intensity, the volume, it's impossible. I say resistance training can be positive, but I don't know how resistance training is necessary for that. And my opinion, what we need to do is perform, and I would like to keep work on that, to analyze different interventions using clinical trials in swimmers, adolescents.
That's great. This will be able to happen. I would love to see similar research being conducted by you in different settings and maybe different countries with different levels of swimmers, because swimming will always be part of my life. And as I said, I would say that youth is different than semi-professionals, that is different than professional swimmers. And I wish I had a crystal ball to see this happening in the future.
Professor, sorry that your screen frozen, and I didn't follow this question, this comment properly at all.
I just said that I would love to see similar research being conducted by you in different settings and even in different countries. Now I live in the United States, and I know that swimming here is extremely different than swimming in Brazil. In Brazil, we engage in swimming 365 days a year. In America, they have the season for each sport with that benefits bone health. But I think that's it. I just put a few things in your head for the future to consider, and I know that each reality will be unique, even better than you already are. And thank you for inviting me to be part of it. It was a pleasure to read your articles and your dissertation, and I have no doubt that you publish this in very good journals.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Thank you for your comments to take time to read my thesis. I select you because you have a strong experience in swimming and also worked with bone mineral density. And it will be a pleasure to work with you in your projects in the future, considering different countries, analyze these variables on that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Bruno. That was really useful points from the practical element, which were actually missing in the discussion so far. So we faced, I think, some of these points from the professional athletes we've been in contact and engaged in research over the years. So these points are really crucial to see the perspective of them into research and how we can translate it to implementation of the actual research and how it can be practically applied. So this is really crucial to move forward the research projects around the globe. So if we can move now to the last but not least professor and examiner, Professor Luis Alberto Gobbo. The word is with you now, so please feel free to ask any questions and stimulate discussion with Ricardo.
Thank you, Professor Dimitris. Thank you all. I'm sorry, I would like to say sorry first of all, because I have a crying baby here. This is the first of the first 2 days of our days with a nanny. My wife get back to work, and I don't think he's getting adapted. But anyway, he will, okay? He's crying. I don't know if you can hear, but I'm sorry. But it's
no,
okay.
Don't worry at all. Don't worry at all. Thank you for being with us.
Okay. I think he has some cramps, okay? But he's in good hands and he'll be okay. Don't worry about it. But anyway, thank you very much. It's a nice pleasure to be here. I'd like to give my compliments to the board. First of all, the advisors, Professor Romulo, I don't know, Romulo is still there. Is he sleeping already? Okay, he is there. Also, Professor Dimitri, Professor Renata and Bruna, Professor Renata again. It's a pleasure to be with you. Bruna, we have known each other for some time earlier. And nice to see you again. Again, say hi to Mr. Lynch. And the baby, I think it's one baby only, okay? It's just one.
Yeah, we have a second right here.
Oh, great. Pretty soon, he or she will be the one crying, okay?
Yeah, 8 weeks, he'll be here.
Okay, congratulations for you all. And a special compliment to a great friend of my Portuguese friend, Professor Manuel João Coelho, the one that hosted me in his own house. I'll never forget that. Thank you very much. Ricardo, it's a great pleasure to be here, to be a part of this great moment, this PhD presentation, to be a part of this important moment of your life. As I have told you before, I have the pleasure to participate in the previous moment with Renata, Romulo, Dimitri, and I could understand your work. I have the chance to understand all your work up to chapter, I'm not sure now, but chapter 6, I think. And now I got the chance to see the last 2 chapters with 2 great papers. And I got to see that you have some changes. We didn't ask, though, you to change so many things, so many, to do so many corrections. And you were elegant to send me an email to give your feedback to us. Thank you, because this is not common. Professor Manuel João and Bruna didn't have this situation because they were not in the qualification, but probably Renata also got the email or the feedback from the qualification. This is something very abnormal. Actually, I wouldn't say abnormal, because abnormal is something that happens not frequently. And actually, this never happened before. I never got an email of someone telling me what he or she did from qualification to the final presentation. So thank you very much. Although I could look both, I could compare both qualification and the final test, I could see that you didn't actually follow all my recommendations, but this is not something you didn't respect. This is something you have personality, okay? And this is important. Most of the things I wrote you or I gave you, I proposed you, was personal stuff, okay? And you show personality. I understand as that. So I'm not mad. I'm just saying that. I could look at that, and I saw that you choose to maintain Ricardo Agostinette's way to write. I hope it's Ricardo Agostinette's way to write, not Romulo or Dimitri's ways to write, okay? It's Ricardo's way to write. But anyway, it was really nice to see your thesis. I think, Ricardo, I have received a thesis that I consider to be one of the best material I have ever read in this period. As a professor in the graduation program, I have been participating with the physical therapy, the first movement science program, and now the joint physical therapy plus movement science that is called movement science, the new movement science. I'm pretty sure to tell you that it's the best material, one of the best material I have received. Not because it's in English. I have already received theses or dissertations in English, but from from the first page, the cover to the last page, you were very, how can I say, you have a methodology that you apply and you follow it, okay? It was very nice to read your thesis, something I have a pleasure to read, something I was entertained to read, okay? Okay. Okay, I have some things to talk about you, okay? I'm going to give you, with the other professors, the final verdict. But before I congratulate you for the beautiful work you have done, not only for the thesis, but mainly for the work you have done in the college, we are together, because I'm the only professor here in the board to be in the college. You have done your work. So I wanna make sure to let everybody knows here, even Dimitris that have been working with you, but to let also Professor Manuel João, Professor Renata, Bruna might know something about you, but I want to also other people know who is Ricardo. I want to talk very few things about the thesis. I had more things to talk about. And as the last one to talk, we always have that situation. I could say, oh, everybody before me have told everything I was going to tell. And that's something very bad, because it seems that we haven't read the material, but that's not true. But actually, Professor Manuel João, he decided to have a different discussion with you. Renata, she has kind of her own discussion. But Bruna, actually, he have a discussion pretty close to what I was going to talk with you. So maybe me and Bruno, we kind of read mainly the final discussion, thinking about the same thing, okay? I'm going to try to talk with you a little more in the end about this. I'm kind of worried about this situation, but I don't think it's a problem, okay? I just want to hear Ricardo saying how he's going to present this to the world, okay? But as I told you, I have very few things to talk with you in the thesis. And actually, Ricardo, I have what I have to talk with you. It's not from the both papers, the new papers. Actually, I think they're great. I thought they were SEM structural equation model, but you present as another name. But isn't that is that the same thing, or is nothing related? You present as general equation, structured equation.
Professor, but these are different things. The GEE I use it to compare groups, and it was possible to select a gamma scale or a linear scale. The structural analysis are saying I use the mediation analysis.
Yes, it's just one group, and we try to find what mediates
exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
This model is possible to check also the mediation, the reference.
I don't know why. But does it did in some moment in the qualification you talk about the SEM?
I think maybe I talk about, because I use it in the introduction to justify my thesis. I use that in my master degree. Probably okay. You remember that because of this.
Yes, I think that what confused me when I read the GEE was because I have heard somewhere, sometime, the term SEM, and I thought, wasn't that supposed to be SEM? But now I understand, because it came to my mind that we are comparing groups. It doesn't make sense to use SEM when you compare groups. Okay, perfect. But anyway, I want to understand one thing about. So I'm kind of lost here, because there are so many pages, and okay, I found it. Here, yes. The paper I'm looking for, yes, I found it. It's in chapter 6, okay?
Yes, let me open here.
It's very punctual, my doubt, okay? So it's, I told you, it's gonna be fast, and we finally can give you the verdict that you can go to your barbecue. Table 6.2 and 6.3.
Page 6. What's the page, Professor? Sorry.
97.
Okay. Yes, I got that.
Okay. Yes, you did some. I realized that, first of all, in qualification, was this paper submitted?
No.
Okay. Okay, because it's different. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can explain why.
Go ahead.
Okay. Actually, Professor, this paper, I inserted a new more table because Professor Renata Billiman asked to me to compare also swimming and the no sport group, considering the dependent variables that was bone mineral density. For this reason, I had one table more.
Okay, I like that. So congratulations again to be humble. I told you you have your personality to write the way you want, but also you are humble to accept that. But something I think very odd on table 6.2, you have on spine. Okay, the comparison between swimmers and non-sports group, the interval confidence, they are both negative. That means that okay, this is not. No, so there are 12 months, okay? So they are both, the lower limit and the upper limit, they are both negative. So that means that they are having lower, what's that, bone mineral density during 12 months. Isn't that odd?
It's very odd, and I was expecting this question. So let me try to explain. Firstly, it's important to consider that this comparison was performed adjusting the model by age of peak high velocity, sex, length of tissue, and moderate vigorous physical activity. In this sense, it's possible that these variables can affect the estimated mean, because here I have estimated mean. However, I have another important limitation in this study, and I recognized that in my discussion. What's happened? When I performed the no sport group, the DXA measurement, we did the machine in UNESCO was broke, and was necessary to use the machine from a private clinic.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes, but in the follow-up, I didn't realize. I don't remember why I didn't do this, but I should to ask Professor Romulo to perform this analysis of control group again in the machine. of the clinical practice. But I didn't do this. I did in the UNESP. I believe this effect can be the error between the machines.
Okay.
For this reason, in the first version of this manuscript, I didn't compare the groups. I just showed the physical activity and compared swimmers, because swimmers, they use the same machine, but the control group, considering the machine was broken, was impossible to fix, was necessary. But this is a really strong limitation of the study, because it's very different compared with the literature, and it's very different compared with another papers as well of the thesis.
Just wondering, do you have the crude value for this non-sport group of BMD, ABMD?
Professor, I do, but not in the paper. I have just the baseline.
No,
I don't
okay.
have the.
What I'm wondering if it's the when you look to the crude value, still
Yes.
they are negatives.
Professor, if I'm not wrong, in the control group, I also found this in the crude values in no sport group. But the confidence interval, I don't remember if they are both negative. But I believe, I remember that the mean value was negative as well. Okay. For this reason, I think I had a strong effect of the machine explain that.
Yes, and this 0.033, how, talking about absolute values, okay? How bad is that? How bad is that? Do you know? I know, Cielo, what I don't want to get this discussion so far, because I understand that the later year they might get positive values, okay, because of the probably you have some explanation, some factors, but I don't want you to understand that I'm trying to say that they are getting some osteogenic process like osteopenia or osteoporosis, but I just thought that it was something odd, you know, but I kind of believe it could be something because of the machine in this situation, but also because of the control variables. But anyway, I don't want to extend too much this discussion, because I think we should look at other variables here. And since I'm talking about that, it's my last question, actually. We, on the last two papers, you decide to use resistance training, the swimming, okay, and the inflammation process, okay. I'm sorry, not the swimming. The bone mineral density, not the resistance training, but the load, and the inflammation process. You use some biomarkers. You didn't consider, you have some confounders. What was that? Age and high
high velocity. I'm not.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, but one thing, I know that you might not have that. Okay, I know that, I understand that you might not have that, but I would like to discuss that. You don't have to discuss that much, but I just would like to think, to hear what you think. What about the nutrition, and how much nutrition could affect or could mediate or could be used as a co-founder in this theoretical model? Did you understand what I meant? What I mean with nutrition?
Nutritional intake of the adolescent. Yes, Professor. This was a point that Professor Brunaturi also as well. We didn't control the nutritional intake of the adolescent, and we know that the food you eat can affect your inflammatory or your another parameters as well. And ABCD, if I'm not wrong, in this wave 2022, they start to control that. And if they control, I don't know, the calories intake, the type of the food they intake, they could be used to adjust the model to control. But in this case, I think I didn't found difference between the groups, not because about the intake food, but they are health. The control group are also health, and they are adolescents. For this reason, I think this could be justified, the results similar. My hypothesis was, considering the intense of training, they can have more inflammation on the body, but I didn't confirm this hypothesis. But the nutrition is important, because I have a good point, Professor. The swimmers and present higher calcium and higher vitamin D compared with no sport group. I don't know why. I believe because they have more intake of this nutritional, this food rich, because they had professional work with them. Okay, it's better you eat this, you eat that. This could justify the more vitamin D and calcium in this group. It's important to control that. I agree completely.
Did you consider, I'm sorry, are you, not you, Ricardo, are you, GCRAF or Live, considering other co-founders for the ABCD in 2022 on?
Professor, I need to be honest with you. I'm not inside of the team this year.
You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. You have more things to worry about, okay? Okay.
But I think that the guys are working out to start new confounders.
Okay. What I want to tell you, Romulo, are you there? Are you sleeping, Romulo? Okay. Okay. I want to, is Pedro? Pedro, raise your hand if you are there. Okay. What I want to tell you is that in about, I'm not sure, 3 weeks or 2 weeks ago from now, the bioimpedance is on the Defesa lab, okay? It's under the computer. And we have been assessing the guys that have been doing Defesa, the body composition analysis. We have been analyzing them with bioimpedance in the scan table, and we are finding some interesting stuff with bioimpedance, and also we are still doing the research. It's not young people, it's not adolescents, it's not children, but we believe that bioimpedance, not using the body compositions variables as they have been using for the last 50 years, but using the crude parameters such as resistance and reactance and phase angle can be interesting markers for you. So I just want to, Romulo, to know that the bioimpedance machine is in the lab, the Defesa lab, and it will be there as long as it's necessary, okay? So whenever the guys from GCRAF or Live, I never know what's the name, okay? I think it's GCRAF or maybe it's Live. Live is everybody's, Jamil's group, it's Diego's group, and GCRAF is Romulo's group. Whenever you want some instruction, not how to measure, but what about to measure? What is the variables, and how can they be applied, and how can they be co-founders in such situations? I'm all open. You know that I can be available to with pleasure to be in touch with you. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. And I told you in the beginning that I have something to talk about. This great guy, this kid. I look at Ricardo as a kid, and Ricardo is such a great person. It's a man, actually. Okay, Oh, no, I'm sorry. I have the question I told, I remember now. I said that Bruna was talking most of things I would like to talk about. And I have two questions, actually. The first one is kind of two. Aren't you afraid that the parents of young people, they could misinterpret your results, and they could choose different modalities for their children? You understand from your conclusion because of the situation about ABMD, but I'm saying misinterpret, okay? And especially since their options is swimming and not resistance training. So what your conclusion report is, you should add resistance training, and sometimes the parents, they are putting their kids in swimming and they are not considering resistance training. This is the first question. And the second question, you are finishing a scientific report, okay, a document, scientific document, but I see, and I'm sure you see also, as this document having a great practical application. So how do you intend to apply it in practice? Professor, you have told me already, you have told me not, you have told Bruno already that the coach should apply resistance training, but that's not, for me, that's not your practical application. I think there is something else, okay? So please go ahead.
Professor, about your first comment about the parents, what the parents need to thinking about. In my opinion, will be depend the level of engagement of the adolescent. Considering you are children, I think you should to perform different sports. I think it's important to develop different motor skills, to develop the adolescent different ways. But if the adolescent 11, 12 years old want to start, okay, I want to perform swimming, but I will perform just twice a week, for example. I think, in my opinion, this adolescent could also perform another sport. Okay, I will perform swimming 2-3 times per week, and they will perform another impact sport 2 or 3 times per week. In another way, if I have an adolescent that engaged in swimming at a competitive level, I would say for the parents, please, it's important for your kids to perform resistance training, not only for their bone, but to avoid injuries as well. It's important, resistance training, the literature shows that resistance training can avoid injuries. Maybe they could do another dry land training, but I didn't check these possibilities in my thesis, but it could be a good options as well, in my opinion. This is what I would say to the parents. And about practical implications of the study, like I said to Professor Bruno, maybe the first point is, indeed, swimmers that have lower bone mineral density because they don't have impact. And the muscle construct performing the water is not enough to cause strain in the bone. This is the most important point for the practical implication. And after that, it's important to show for the society, for the coach, that dry land training could be a good option for the adolescents. The literature in the field show that dry land training is important to improve the swimming performance. And also, we are shown that, okay, the swimming training also outside the pool also can help the bone mineral density of that. I think this is the two most important things to consider in my thesis for practical implications. And lastly, the swimmers that train 6 times per week, they don't have inflammations. They don't have a negative physiological effect.
Okay. Yes, I might not have made the right question, but I told you that I wouldn't like to hear this this kind of answer, because you kind of answer already, Bruna, that. But actually, I want to suggest to you that you could make different kind of publication, okay? Non-scientific publication. Did you understand?
Yes,
For
I understand.
Professionals, coaches, you know. So you should reach maybe CB, Confederação Brasileira de Natação. What's the name? How do they say that? It's like CB.
Confederação Brasileira de Desportos Aquáticos.
Exato. Thank you. Okay, so it's something like that I think you should do, okay? And also, I'm pretty sure Capesp you'll make a publication of your study on their magazine. So this kind of publication, I think, is very interesting for you, because your results, they shouldn't be only published on scientific reports, okay? But on professional reports as well. I think that's very important for you, okay? Do you have family on the audience?
My family's here, Professor. My parents, my brother, my sister, and my friends, yes.
Dimitri, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can I finish in Portuguese?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, you can finish in Portuguese, yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, Dimitri. I think you're going to be the only one who will not be able to understand me, okay?
I might pick up some of them.
Ok. Ok, Ricardo. Eu gostaria de terminar em português justamente porque eu acho que é importante seus pais saberem, a sua família, seus amigos, quem você é de verdade, né? E aí não tem muitas coisas boas para falar de você. Não, brincadeira. Né? Então, na verdade, eu conheço o Ricardo, eu conheci o Ricardo num dos primeiros dias, né? Eu entrei 15 de abril de 2013 na Unesp e meu computador, ou melhor, o computador que me deram, né, ele não funcionou por alguma razão e eu pedi a ajuda de alguém. Esse alguém era exatamente o Ricardo. O Ricardo simplesmente ele abdicou de todas as funções do dia dele para me ajudar. Ele não me conhecia, né? Eu pensei, esse rapaz, no mínimo, ele está me puxando o saco, né? Ele quer alguma coisa em troca. E ele ficou o dia inteiro lá, e no final eu levei ele para comer uma pizza, falou, vou te pagar uma pizza, tudo. E naquele momento eu percebi o grau de curiosidade que ele tinha, de paixão que ele tinha por tudo. As perguntas que ele fazia eram perguntas, de fato, de pessoa que tinha um objetivo na vida, né? Eu falei, esse menino vai longe. E naquele momento ele não era do grupo do Rômulo, ele saiu do grupo que ele estava, e ele passou, já estava no último ano de graduação, e ele passou para a pós-graduação. E daí ele decolou, né? Então, no ano seguinte, teve lá um auditório que hoje está voltando a funcionar, o auditório 5 nosso. Eu estava ali, já era no ano seguinte, daí foi anunciar os prêmios, o Ricardo ganhou um prêmio lá. E eu falei, o menino que eu paguei a pizza lá, né? Falei, que legal, né? Tem futuro. Então, na verdade, é o seguinte, né? O que eu quero falar, o Ricardo é uma pessoa, com primeira coisa, o coração dele é gigantesco, né? Acima de todas as qualidades que ele pode ter, que tem muitas, ele é uma pessoa humilde e cheia de gratidão. Então, acho que isso é incomparável a qualquer outra gratidade, humildade e gratidão. Então, se você tem isso, o resto as pessoas conseguem. Parabéns. No campus, na faculdade, ao longo desses 10 anos, Ricardo é extremamente reconhecido por todas as turmas que passaram nesses 10 anos. Então, se fizer a conta aí, né, 10 anos, dividido por 4, né, na verdade, quantas turmas entraram, 10 turmas entraram, né, e completaram, quantas turmas completaram, muitas pessoas passaram, o Ricardo era muito reconhecido. Mas não é porque ele é alto, não é porque ele é um bonitão, não sei o que lá. Simplesmente porque o Ricardo, ele era uma pessoa que, de certa forma, ele tinha essa atitude de fazer as coisas, sob um ponto de vista ou outro. Um ponto de vista de tomar a iniciativa, de fazer as coisas, e o outro ponto de vista de quando era solicitado, ele de fato fazia. Ele fazia com o coração aberto, com bastante satisfação. Isso extremamente interessante. O reconhecimento dele, sempre, não apenas na graduação, mas na pós-graduação, não apenas pela sua capacidade acadêmica, científica, mas pela sua capacidade humana, isso acima de tudo. Sempre foi muito respeitado, né? Sempre foi muito solicitado para resolver os problemas, e sempre, acima de tudo, toda vez que eu encontrava com o Ricardo, essa aparência tranquila, uma aparência disposta a fazer as coisas. Nunca vi o Ricardo uma aparência negativa, com um semblante não disposto a ajudar, um semblante para trazer energias negativas. A energia do Ricardo sempre para cima, sem que a gente soubesse realmente, de fato, como estava naquele dia a situação dele. Podia estar nos piores dias, mas, acima de tudo, ele deixava transpassar uma atitude positiva. O seu grupo, né, aí sim, de CRAF, no IVE, o que a gente tinha dos demais alunos e do professor Rômulo é que o Ricardo era, de fato, um líder nato. Não porque ele queria ser o líder, mas porque ele, de fato, era considerado pelos demais o líder, por seu comprometimento, pela sua responsabilidade em fazer os trabalhos. Isso é difícil. E acima de tudo, pela capacidade dele manter, durante 10 anos, o comprometimento e a responsabilidade. Isso não é para qualquer pessoa. Manter o comprometimento durante 10 anos não é para qualquer aluno. O aluno pode ser bom, pode ser tecnicamente bom, mas manter comprometimento durante 10 anos não é fácil. Ricardo é extremamente interessado em discussões científicas, nas atividades científicas, e a coisa mais importante, uma pessoa que, quando chegava para conversar, é extremamente educada e elegante. Tá? Nunca viu o Ricardo com falta de elegância na conversa, na aproximação. Isso é sinal de que a educação dele foi muito bem dada, muito boa, muito bem cuidada pelos seus pais. Então, aproveito para parabenizar aí os pais do Ricardo. E hoje, recebendo o título de doutor, né? Não sei, né? Ainda não tem nada certo. Eu vejo o Ricardo para aceitar um cargo de professor assistente, talvez até associado, em qualquer lugar do mundo, né? E eu estou falando numa banca que tem 3 pessoas internacionais aqui, né? A Bruna, o Manuel João e o Dimitris. Então, já estou dando um empurrãozinho aí para que as portas se abram, né? Acho que o Ricardo, o Brasil, talvez seja pouco para ele. Então, que os pais começam já apertar o coração aí, porque é possível que o Ricardo vá fazer as malas e voar longe, né? Sair ali da região da grande Santa Cruz das Palmeiras, né? A Santa Cruz das Palmeiras, Aguaí e as demais adjacências, né? E eu falo isso com bastante tranquilidade, tá bom? Então, Ricardo, mantenha a humildade, mantenha essa semblança sua, sempre o seu comprometimento, a sua responsabilidade, e continue sendo grato às pessoas, porque você, no futuro, as pessoas serão gratas a você e você vai ver que sensação legal é essa, tá bom? Parabéns, sucesso na sua vida. E parabéns aos seus pais também.
Professor, thank you for your comments, your scientific comments, and mainly thank you for your words in the final. I had a good education. I prefer to say after, but I had a good education from my parents, and my life and my education showed me how it's important to be grateful for the people that believe in you. And I always try to show for the people how important it is to me, to us, these people, to me. For this reason, I choose these members of the board, because I am grateful for them. My supervisor, I'm grateful for them, and I always be grateful for them, because it was impossible to do what I did alone. It was impossible. Professor Romulo, take my hand, sit in my side, and Professor Romulo, I'm confusing to speak English now. Professor Romulo taught me everything I know. But thank you, Professor. It's an honor to have you in my board, to have you in my academic life, and mainly for you also believed me during these 10 years. You are responsible for this achievement. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you as well.
So I think now we can possibly move to the next stage, which the four examiners and myself will follow the link that Ricardo has sent in the chat and by mail, so we can discuss between us the details and vote as part of the process. And then we'll return to this room so we can announce the result and declare the process closed. So if you can follow, please, the link that Ricardo has sent in the chat and by mail, so we can move to the other link and also mute and close the cameras in this link. See you in a while, Ricardo. Well done.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, I am in this room just to let all of this enter, and I will left them. I will leave them.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Professors, with
We're all Ricardo, can you hear us?
Yes, I think everyone is back.
Everyone is back. 1, 2, yeah, all of us, okay. So thank you all for the contribution to each one of the examiners. And first of all, for all the organization and the input that Ricardo has put into his PhD thesis. So following all the discussion we had, the presentation, all the critical points and really important points raised by the examiners and answered carefully by Ricardo, I'm more than happy to announce that Ricardo has successfully passed his PhD defense, and we have full vote of 5 of us to approve that. And not only that, I know that it's only approve or disprove, but it's important to mention that all of us, we agree that Ricardo is on the top researchers on the field. So if he can be ranked as pediatric, is above 95 percentile, as Manuel said earlier. So we're more than happy to approve that. So I would like to congratulate Ricardo for all his effort, everything he has done over the years, everything that he has put, the patience he basically showed all over the years. We're all proud of you, the supervisory team for you. And I would like to say all these things in English, but it will also be translated in Portuguese so everyone can hear that there. Ricardo, you have some unique elements, both on your character, the integrity as a researcher, and the skills, because it's really hard to combine those things. And it's important for those to be known to everyone and to you to hear it yourself. So as a researcher, you're an excellent person. You work really hard, really carefully. You listen to the advices and you evolve as not many people can do in the world. And I want you to believe that and keep going. And in terms of your personal traits, you are one of the kindest researchers and PhD students. You help everyone around you. You care about the participants and not only about the results and the data. And this is really important to become a good and honest researcher in the field. So we all wish you the best as a researcher. We'll help you grow as much as we can from all parts of the planet as we can, as we all agreed and discussed. So we're happy to congratulate you and for your successful defense. So if Professor Gobo now can please translate it in Portuguese for me, because I'm learning Portuguese, but I'm not that good yet. Professor Gobo, I think you're muted. So if you can unmute your mic, thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you, Dimitri. Nice words. Obrigado, Dimitri. Belas palavras do professor Dimitri. Para quem não conseguiu entendê-lo por falta do idioma, fez belos elogios ao professor doutor Ricardo Agostinete e já anunciou o resultado, obviamente, e sobre provavelmente uma metodologia inglesa ou uma metodologia europeia ou fora do Brasil, a gente, no nosso programa, temos como hábito apenas aprovar ou não aprovar. E vocês vão ver isso após a leitura da ata, que é algo obrigatório que eu tenho que fazer aqui. Mas foi colocado pelo próprio professor Dimitri que nós fizéssemos uma avaliação qualitativa do professor Ricardo. Professor doutor Ricardo. A avaliação qualitativa de todos foi que, de uma forma geral, o professor Ricardo está no nível de 95%. A sua tese atinge um nível de 95%, obviamente, porque necessita de alguns ajustes muito pontuais, não minors, que a gente fala, que não comprometem em nada a sua tese, e, sobretudo, a aprovação se dá, acima de tudo, por conta da sua capacidade intelectual, científica e humana. O professor Ricardo, ele é digno, de fato, de trabalhar em qualquer lugar, como já tem tentado em alguns locais, e é uma pessoa que realmente tem um futuro imenso e extraordinário para frente. Então, estamos diante de uma apresentação e de uma defesa de doutorado ímpar nesse momento. Então, nesse sentido, eu apresento a ata da defesa pública da tese de doutorado de Ricardo Ribeiro Agostinete, discente do programa de pós-graduação em Ciências da Motricidade, o antigo programa Ciências da Motricidade, da Faculdade de Ciência e Tecnologia. Aos 22 dias do mês de julho do ano 2022, às 9 horas, na sala 7 de videoconferência, realizou-se defesa de tese de doutorado de Ricardo Ribeiro Agostinete, intitulada Impact of Swimming at Competitive Level on Bone Mineral Density of Adolescents. A comissão examinadora foi constituída pelos seguintes membros: professor Dr. Rômulo Araújo Fernandes, orientador do Departamento de Educação Pública da Unesp. Professor Dr. Manuel João Coelho Silva, participação virtual da Universidade de Coimbra, Portugal. Professora doutora Renata Soares Bielman, participação virtual da Faculdade de Nutrição da Universidade Federal de Pelotas. Professora doutora Bruna Camilo Lynch, participação virtual da Lander University, Departamento de Physical Education and Exercise Science. E professor Dr. Luiz Alberto Gobo, participação virtual também do Departamento de Educação Física da Unesp. Após a exposição pelo doutorando e a arguição pelos membros da comissão examinadora que participaram do ato de forma presencial e ou virtual, o discente recebeu o conceito final aprovado. Nada mais havendo, foi lavrada a presente ata que, após lida e aprovada, foi assinado pelo presidente da comissão examinadora. Parabéns, Ricardo, sucesso na sua vida. Fique à vontade agora.
I would like to ask Dr. Dimitris to do my acknowledgement, some parts in Portuguese, some parts in English. I prefer to read. Let me read.
Você tem apresentação para fazer, Ricardo?
No, I will read.
Ok.
Acknowledgement, meus agradecimentos. Eu sou uma espécie de paranoico ao contrário. Desconfio que as pessoas fazem conspiração para me fazer feliz. É baseado nessa célebre frase do escritor J.G. Salinger, que agradeço as pessoas que, além de parecerem conspirar pela minha felicidade, são responsáveis, direto e indiretamente, por essa tese e essa conquista. Primeiramente, agradeço aos meus pais, Cristina e Fernando, por todo amor restrito, além do sacrifício, do esforço e priorização pela minha saúde dos meus irmãos, em detrimento de bens materiais, esforços que me fizeram chegar até aqui. Acredito que seja exatamente por isso que hoje consigo compreender com considerável lucidez o porquê minha mãe e meu pai sempre evidenciaram seu interesse e incentivo para que cursássemos a universidade pública, mesmo que a instituição estivesse quase 600 quilômetros de casa. Eles sabiam que a capacidade de uma educação transformadora e emancipadora que a universidade possui na vida de um indivíduo. E serei extremamente grato por isso. Mãe e pai, essa tese foi confeccionada graças a vocês e esse título de doutor é de vocês. Aos meus avós paternos, Paulo e Benedita, em memória, e paternos, Newton, em memória, e Leontina, agradeço por todo amor, toda dedicação e esforço por minha educação. Guardarei com muito amor e carinho no coração tudo que fizeram por mim. Estendo os agradecimentos também aos meus irmãos, Rodrigo e Rafael, meus companheiros de vida, de jornada, e a toda a minha família, tios, primas, primos, estão aí, e amigos de infância, como o Breno e o Cinco tá aí, pelo apoio e torcida pelas realizações e conquistas. A minha namorada e companheira de vida e de sonhos, Laura, acredito que ela seja uma das pessoas que mais conspiram para me fazer feliz. Há 8 anos, praticamente, toda a minha trajetória acadêmica me apoiando e incentivando a buscar meus sonhos, mesmo que isso, a curto e médio prazo, pudesse nos trazer uma instância física. A carreira acadêmica é cheia de altos e baixos, incertezas e mudanças, muitas delas geográficas. E por isso sou grato pelo privilégio de ter ao meu lado uma pessoa tão compreensiva e companheira. Nossas viagens e períodos vivendo no exterior corroboram isso. Obrigado por deixar todo esse período mais leve e principalmente por todo amor, doação e incentivo para que eu seguisse em frente em momentos que eu mesmo não acreditava em mim e na minha capacidade. Te amo. Ao meu orientador, professor Dr. Rômulo Fernandes, o qual possui importância inestimável em minha formação pessoal e principalmente profissional. Tive o privilégio de ser orientado pelo professor desde 2012, no ano de seu ingresso na universidade como docente e meu 2º ano de graduação. Recordo-me de nossas primeiras reuniões no antigo Polinho, onde o senhor ensinava-nos todas as diversas temáticas, com muita paciência, carinho e cuidado. De lá para cá passaram-se 10 anos, e minha gratidão e admiração apenas aumentaram. Obrigado por confiar em mim, em meu trabalho, e me proporcionar experiências incríveis e principalmente obrigado por essa pessoa fantástica, esse professor orientador excepcional, o qual pensou em mim e no meu desenvolvimento a todo momento. Acreditou no meu potencial de forma única. Como já disse outras vezes, tudo que conquistei academicamente eu devo ao Senhor. E por isso, minha gratidão será eterna. Espero conseguir retribuir um dia. To my PhD supervisor abroad, Dr. Dimitris Varrogoulos, for trusting me in my work and providing me one of the best experience of my life. To develop a PhD at Church, you taught me that science must be well thought out and be done carefully. Because most of the time, something well done will take time and hard work. Thank you for your time, patience, and dedication in teaching me, for our scientific and informal conversation, and for the special moments that made my experience in English more than special. I grew a lot during my time with you in England. That's why you are responsible for my achievements, as my publication, the best paper of my life so far, Congress Award, and mainly for me be carrying out this PhD defense speaking English. Thank you so much. I will always be grateful for you. Ao professor Dr. Fábio Lira, o qual se tornou um grande amigo, que apesar de nunca ter apresentado vínculo formal de orientação comigo, sempre confiou em mim, esteve próximo e disposto a me ajudar no que fosse possível, pessoalmente e academicamente. Na maioria das vezes, carregados de conversas, conselhos, experiências e incentivos para o progredista, tornando-me capaz de brigar pelos meus sonhos e oportunidades. Também sempre serei grato ao senhor, professor. Ao professor Dr. Manuel João, que além de membro da comissão organizadora, foi meu orientador de mestrado durante estágio superior na Universidade de Coimbra, fazendo parte diretamente do meu processo de formação. Agradeço profundamente ao professor por ter confiado em mim, em meu trabalho e por ter proporcionado minha primeira inesquecível experiência no exterior, demandando tempo e paciência em me ensinar, o qual me proporcionou um amadurecimento pessoal e acadêmico inestimável. É uma honra trabalhar com o professor, sempre admirei e é referência em nossa área do conhecimento. Serei sempre grato pelas oportunidades, professor. Ao professor Diego Cristófaro, pela amizade, conhecimento, auxílio e confiança em meu trabalho ao longo desses anos, resultando em parceria na confecção de artigos. Obrigado pelas oportunidades e incentivo para que eu seguisse minha jornada de cabeça erguida, professor. Ao professor Dr. Luiz Gobo, professora Renata Billeman, professora Bruna Turi. Os professores foram escolhidos devido à minha admiração por cada um, e por isso agradeço terem aceitado o convite de compor a banca de avaliação, por acreditarem no meu trabalho e principalmente por demandar o vosso precioso tempo para contribuir com minha formação profissional. Aos membros de investigação do Grupo de Investigações Científicas relacionadas à atividade física, sem restrição, por todo o trabalho em equipe, dedicação e empenho durante esses 9 anos de recolha de dados. Foi graças a vocês que esse trabalho foi executado. Meus mais sinceros muito obrigado à equipe. I also thank all the students and the professors of the Children's Health and Exercise Research Center, the Church of University of Exeter, for all scientific meetings, great and special moments, mainly in data collections in the foyer on the Friday night. It was an honor to develop part of my PhD in this laboratory, that is a world reference in pediatric physiology. I especially thank Professor Alan Bark for teaching me a lot and for sharing her knowledge and experience doing our PhD together. Kate for the friendship and work together. And lastly, my friend Max for the friendship, for welcoming me so well and making my experience more than special. Thank you very much, mate. I also thank Professor Gracia Marco and Dr. Baguizado from the University of Granada for their trust in my work and the contribution in my research project, including the manuscripts. To my British family, Debs and Lo, for embracing me and made me feel at home in a new country. Thank you for everything, for opening your house for me, for all the love and efforts to make my experience in England unique and very special. For all conversations, moving, watching, pint on the pub, walking, paddle together, trips, and mainly for the encouragement. Mainly use the phrase, Ricardo, good things happen for nice people. And for all in countless times listening to me present my academic work in order to improve my English skills was terrible. You two are special, and I will be always grateful for everything you both have done for me. Para os meus amigos e colegas de trabalho, o Departamento de Educação Física me proporcionou por toda a amizade, parceria, incentivo e disposição a me auxiliar durante esse processo acadêmico. Bárbara Antunes, José Gerosa Neto, Bruna Turi, Leca, Monique, Diego, Ana Rocha, a professora Camila Bonani, Vanessa, Eduardo Campos, Wesley, Igor. Ao André Werneck, além de ser pesquisador que admiro, tornou-se um grande amigo na esfera acadêmica e pessoal. Obrigado por todas as conversas, aulas, artigos, explicações, contribuições e principalmente pela paciência em me ensinar. Tudo isso foi fundamental para o desenvolvimento do meu currículo e na execução dessa tese de doutorado. Agradeço principalmente pelos estímulos e preocupação para que eu progredisse com meus sonhos e anseios, não permitindo que eu jogasse a toalha. Obrigado, meu amigo. Ao Pedro Narciso, pela amizade, parceria, conversa, reflexões, principalmente pela disponibilidade de se colocar a mão na massa e auxiliar-me em todos os aspectos da construção dessa tese, sem exceção, incluindo na formatação. Sou grato principalmente porque você esteve disposto a me auxiliar quando também estava cheio de demandas. Obrigado pela ajuda, meu amigo, elas foram essenciais. Aos meus amigos, companheiros de casinha, começando pelo Santiago Vanegas, também considerado meu filho. Qual eu tenho um carinho muito grande, compartilhamos muita coisa juntas, extensíveis ao Rafael de Marco, ao Eduardo Pereira e ao Yuri Ventura, por toda a amizade, conversas, ombro amiga e principalmente pela disposição a me auxiliar na confecção dessa tese, seja na checagem de planilhas, tratamento de dados, escrita ou indiretamente ajudando as atividades diárias para que eu pudesse ter mais tempo para me dedicar ao documento, passando um pano na casa, fazendo um almoço. Agradecimentos extensíveis aos meus amigos que eu também considero como irmãos. Breno, Raoni, João Lucas, Aleca, Jéssica, Serginho e Marlon. A Mari também está inclusa quando eu falo de todo mundo. Me auxiliaram indiretamente com incentivos e apoio, escutando meus desabafos e preocupações e estando comigo nos momentos mais difíceis, além dos momentos especiais de descontração. A todos os adolescentes envolvidos no ABCD Growth Study, seus pais e respectivos treinadores por confiarem em nosso trabalho. Em especial ao treinador Pepe pela confiança em meu trabalho como pesquisador desde 2013, o qual iniciei as primeiras coletas com a equipe de natação na cidade de Presidente Prudente. A todos os funcionários da FCT Unesp, os quais sempre desempenharam suas funções com muito esmero durante toda a minha permanência na instituição. Em especial, a Tamaya Otsuka e o André Shinohara pela prestatividade em me auxiliar sempre. Ao Laboratório de Análises Clínicas Unilab, em especial a bioquímica diretora Márcia Bringuete, por toda a parceria e esforços em nossas pesquisas, para que nossas pesquisas fossem viabilizadas financeiramente e logisticamente. Por fim, agradeço à Fundação de Amparo à Pesquisa do Estado de São Paulo pela bolsa de doutorado, pela bolsa de estágio exterior. Eu sou financiado pela FAPESP desde 2012 e a FAPESP, tudo que eu passei foi a prova de que o investimento em educação pública ele transforma vidas, e se não fosse a FAPESP eu não teria conseguido nada do que eu consegui. Então, obrigado pelo apoio financeiro e científico, desde minha iniciação científica até o doutoramento, os quais foram imprescindíveis para tornar essa tese possível. Saliento que as opiniões, hipóteses, conclusões ou recomendações... Não, isso aqui é só um texto formal da FAPESP. Esse material são responsabilidades do autor e não expressam a visão da FAPESP. E agradeço também a coordenação de aperfeiçoamento do nível superior CAPES pelo financiamento. Eu tentei não chorar para conseguir ler até o final, mas eu gostaria de agradecer novamente todo mundo que está aqui presente, mesmo que seja com o nome citado, foi importante na formação e foram muito importantes na minha vida. Eu sempre brinco com meus amigos que eu nunca imaginei conversar com o Ricardo de 14 anos e falar para ele que ele ia ser doutor. Essa vida me ensinou muito, e eu queria ser adulto para não precisar estudar mais. E eu aprendi muito, e a vida me deu lições importantíssimas, só que tudo isso aconteceu graças às pessoas que eu tinha ao meu lado. Desde meus pais, meus avós, aos meus amigos de infância, aos meus amigos de universidade, aos meus orientadores, a todo mundo. Eu vou parar. Dimitri, I finished it.
Manuel João, ele não viu. O professor Manuel João, o Ricardo não viu.
Muitos parabéns, Ricardo.
Vai ter churrasco. Yes, we will have barbecue, Professor. All of everyone I invited.
I'm taking the next plane and I'm coming to Presidente Prudence.
Please, you need to come. Thank you, Professor Miller.
I'll be more than happy to be there again. Many congratulations and thank you for the lovely emotional acknowledgements to everyone, which shows how kind and thoughtful and good researchers you are on top of everything else, Ricardo. Well done again. So if we don't have anything else to mention, I think I would like to declare the process closed and congratulate again Ricardo. So please have some nice cervezas for me as well and for all of the examiners. You need to have at least 5 and then so you can celebrate. So well done again and many congratulations, Ricardo.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. I would like just to ask you all to stay in room, take a picture with you.
Yeah, I already took a few pictures, but take more and we can all smile in the camera.
Okay, I will share my screen here, and I want to take a picture of me with the professors here, just to remember that. Hang on. Yeah.
How long was it? How long was it?
1, 2, 3, picture. Professors, thank you again. If you want to finish it, Dr. Dimitris, it's possible to finish. And
Great.
I wait all of you in Presidente Prudente to celebrate with barbecue, Professor Manuel João. You, Professor Renata, Dr. Bruna as well, and Dr. Dimitris and Dr. Bobe.
Next time I fly to Brazil, I'll visit you.
Yes, definitely. Muito
Happy
parabéns, Ricardo. Well done. Go and celebrate with everyone. Well done. Thank you all. We can close the session now. So thank you for joining and well done again, Ricardo. Many congratulations.
Thank you. Bye-bye, professors.
See you. Bye.
Professor Manuel João, thank you very much to accept our invitation. It was a pleasure and an honor. Yeah. We take some pictures together.
Let's say.
Picture for.
Vamos tirar uma foto? Você vai tirar? É.